OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Right, very welcome along to Thursday's OTB AM. I got that right, Eoin. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, very good. What's going on?
Not much, to be quite honest with you. Thursday morning, where we're basking in the glory of Rangers, we're basking in the not so glorious situation at Manchester United. We're, I guess, hoping that Chelsea versus Liverpool tonight delivers the goods, because we've been staring around at a vista that has involved lots of attractive fixtures recently, which haven't delivered much entertainment. So that is what's going on. That is where we're at in a sporting sense this morning.
Yeah, and it also looks like we're going to lose the opportunity to stage some games in Dublin for the European Championships. That's what the word on the street is. It hasn't been confirmed yet. The FAI say there's still a chance. FIFA or UEFA have not fully made up their minds yet, but the mood music that's being briefed to some of the newspapers this morning is that the games that were scheduled to be played in Ireland won't happen in Ireland now. Now, Ireland, Scotland and Bilbao, Dublin, Glasgow and Bilbao are the three match day venues that might not get games. So we'll try and get a few more details for you a little bit later on the show and talk about that. But that's not great, is it?
No, and I'll tell you what, the Irish government are very fortunate that Ireland have not qualified for this European Championships. This is a big story, but this would be a far bigger story had we been looking at our first home European Championships, our first major tournament where Ireland are playing in it, and it doesn't actually happen. It gets pulled from underneath us. Imagine how furious the people of Scotland will be when Hampden Park gets taken out of the situation because their situation in Scotland just simply isn't as good as England. Imagine if that had been us. Micheál Martin is very fortunate that Ireland, that Conor Hourhan missed that chance against Slovakia, because if we were sitting here this morning saying we're not going to get this game, there would be a lot of questions asked about why Ireland aren't in a similar situation to some of their European counterparts to be able to host games to UEFA's standard. How the situation here has got to such a dire point that UEFA are like, you can't host a game.
All you need is like 12,500 people to be able to go to the ground. They're saying if the stadiums can be a quarter full, we'll let you have those games. Do you think if Ireland had qualified that maybe the vaccination process would have been speeded up, that there would have been some kind of weird magic target? I mean, completely unimportant ultimately in the grand scheme of things, but that they might have got the finger out.
No, I don't. I think maybe it definitely frames the conversation a little bit that we will be having, that sports fans will be having, that little bit of a worry of something that we'd have to look forward to. I think the reality is that a lot of people maybe don't have plans or don't have these massive events happening this summer, so maybe there wasn't that specific target in terms of how we're talking about it. You'd like to think it would have had no bearing on actual
You'd like to
health,
think, Eoin, but bear in mind, this is a crew who every 3 or 4 years magic up a new thing to apply for so that they can get their picture taken and talk about that as opposed to talking about the vaccination programme.
Well, mid-sentence there, I did just remember that the 2018 news that Ireland might be involved in a World Cup bid became news this week out of nowhere. So maybe there is a tendency within this government to actually look at sport and say, hold on a minute, this could actually be a vehicle for us to conjure up some positive news. If they could actually say to the world, hey, listen, we can host 12,000 people in the Aviva Stadium. Our vaccination programme is going spiffingly well. That will be maybe what they would have done. So, no way should sport be the vehicle with which things are gauged on a public health level. But stranger things have certainly happened. 12,500
close friends and family of the elected representatives of our great nation able to appear at the Aviva and represent Ireland and nestling beside the cardboard cutouts of ordinary chumps like you and me. Oh, and that's how that would have worked out. And we'd all have been like, smells a bit fishy here or something. Oh, there's the stench of rotten fish there. Don't know what that is. Don't know what that could be. So look, I mean, they are very lucky that we didn't qualify for the Euros ultimately. That's your takeaway from the story, and I quite like it, Eoin.
Yeah, no, they are very, very fortunate that that's the way, because, as I say, Scottish FA, they've said that their domestic cup final is going to take place in Hampden on May 22nd, but UEFA need their stadium a week beforehand. So I wonder if the Scottish FA have actually realised that they're not going to be able to do it. And that's why they're going on and cracking on with their cup final in the middle of this UEFA window that UEFA said they need a stadium. So that's going to be big news. This is such a massive opportunity, not an opportunity, but such a massive moment for Scotland. They haven't been in a tournament since 1998. Plus, it's due to be a home tournament. What a situation that was going to be, even without fans. just to be playing there, even with like whatever it's going to be, 12,000 fans. That would have been brilliant. But there's going to be uproar, you'd imagine, in Scotland that they've been in a situation where England might get the entire thing. I know that's been downplayed in recent days, but they might get the entire thing and Scotland won't. That won't be a great situation.
No, and a beleaguered Scottish government as it is at the moment as well from a political perspective. If you've got any views on this, we'd love to hear from you this morning. 0879 180 180 is the number. You can WhatsApp us that, you can text us on that. You can always leave a comment on the YouTube channel as well. A reminder, OTB AM, live in association with Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. I should have looked this up by now, before now, but are there that many times when Manchester United have worn the zebra jersey and performed really, really well? I'm struggling to remember any where they've there was one game they did really well in it, but other than that, I'm trying to remember which one that was. But mostly the headlines are blankety mank is the headline on that one, and then there's just in case you don't know what a zebra looks like, the Mirror have helpfully done United stuck on zebra crossing, and they put a picture of an actual zebra beside their camera left. Yeah, there it is. There's the zebra. Just in case you didn't know what a zebra was. Or maybe you're one of those zebra people. Oh, and I don't know. Zebra, who cares?
No, I'm zebra, thankfully. I'm pretty sure they wore for their first game of the Champions League, didn't they? And they played really well to start this year's Champions League. So I think that gave them the kickstart. And maybe the reason why they got knocked out of the Champions League was that they just didn't wear the zebra jersey enough.
Okay. So my theory is blown. But fair play to the Mirror, just for all those Mirror readers who don't know what a zebra looks like, just in case. Okay, it's nothing to do with the kit then.
No, it's really not. Like it's kind of hard to disassociate two things here. First of all, that the season has kind of taken this massive spiral towards mediocrity, and I think everybody is feeling it a little bit, unless you've got an all-time great deep squad like Manchester City have at the moment. And then it's hard to separate that from Manchester United taking a little bit of a dip themselves. Like, do we judge them by the standards of Manchester City now when we see them drawing it all at Crystal Palace? It's probably unfair to do that, and they probably deserve a bit of a break, considering every other team in the league is getting a break for being a bit crap at times over the last couple of months. At the same time, if Manchester United have designs on actually winning next year's Premier League or properly contending till the end of the season next year, there just are a number of worrying signs. The defence has been flogged over the last little while, but in fairness, you can't blame the defence for back-to-back 0-0 draws. You've got to start looking up front. And between Rashford, between Martial, who's gone off a cliff this season from a cliff that wasn't very high, to Mason Greenwood, you're looking at players that probably need a bit of financial bolstering next season. Can
I just point out, though, that if you're a Liverpool fan at the moment, your constant refrain has been, we've lost our best defender, and so therefore the whole team has been reconstituted. And as a result, our midfield have to play super defensive, and all we have is Bruno. And if all we have is Bruno, the opposition close that down, and our strikers, well, sorry, I managed to mix up the two stories there, didn't I? That was my whole point. That's the whole point about this, is that like the Man United fans complaining about their strikers and their midfield is an exact replica of what the Liverpool fans are doing, except Liverpool point to the fact that their centre-back got injured, and that's the excuse for the whole season. Whereas, I mean, obviously, Manchester United have a very expensive defensive and goalkeeping setup. I guess what I'm trying to say here is that until Manchester United really have a central defensive partnership that allows them to play on the front foot, then they're going to struggle. And that's really, like, shouldn't their attack be more profitable on nights like last night and over the course of those 6 games against the top 6, where there's been 5-0 draws and 1-0 defeat? That actually the problem the problem with both these teams this season is the same. The central backs and the defence generally can't be trusted.
I see what you're saying, that you can't go out to properly win a game if you believe that you're going to concede loads of goals at the back, whereas Manchester City kind of have that trust at the moment where they're like, we can completely put our stamp on the game. It doesn't matter because we've got fast defenders who'll be able to chase you down on the counter-attack. At times they've got caught like that this season, but generally their defence has held up. It's a fair point. I still think that the output from their front three, with the exception of Edinson Cavani, who's looked really, really good at times this season, just hasn't been good enough. And Bruno Fernandes has obviously been absolutely exceptional. It was interesting to hear that Stephanie Roach the other morning thinks that a right-sided player is what is needed for Manchester United, that it's unfair to look at Rashford and Martial in isolation. It's actually who is playing on the right-hand side. And we know now that Marcus Rashford playing on the right isn't going to get the best out of himself. He's much better on the other flank or through the middle. And the person who might have actually made a difference for them this season could have been Jadon Sancho, who would have been great on the right-hand flank. I'm not sure if that would make the transformative impact on an attack because of what you've outlined, and because maybe the centre forward, if Cavani's not playing, wouldn't be good enough. But it would have been interesting to see what would have happened. I would still, if you're a Manchester United fan, have great hope in someone like Mason Greenwood exploding next season. The truth with him, though, is that last season he completely overperformed his expected goals. This season he's completely underperformed his expected goals. He had that effort last night that 12 months previous would have been hurtling into the top left corner of the net. And also, he's 19 years of age. You can put your hope in this guy that he will step up next year, to use that awful cliche, like a new signing almost, if he comes into full fitness and perhaps doesn't get picked for the Euros, which might be a positive for him. They need to get the checkbook out, but Solskjaer said in previous days that it might not be a big spending summer, which would be a little bit of a worry. But again, this is in the context of, do you expect Manchester United to win the league next season? Maybe that's an unfair expectation. Maybe Manchester City will actually open a gap if they start the season well next year.
Look, I think there's a very good chance that will happen because of the strength and depth that they have and the fact that they are likely to spend. The price of gas is going up, the price of oil is going up, and so therefore Manchester City ultimately will have plenty of money to spend. It's 7:41 this morning. Man United weren't great last night, but Rangers edged closer to the SPL title with a late win. Here's their boss, Stephen Gerrard, speaking to Sky Sports.
Do you think it's maybe unfair as well on Alfredo Morelos, who might be getting a reputation unfairly for that?
Don't worry about Alfredo. He's just scored the winner. He's dancing around there with no top on to Sweet Caroline. He's fine.
Was it key to take the emotion out of it at half-time and keep the players
It's difficult
galvanised?
to take the emotion out because you're trying to get over the line. You're the manager of a club that hasn't won the league for 10 years, and your fans are desperate to get over the line and get there. And as I say, if this was one official making a blatant mistake that he gets wrong in the normal speed of play, I'll go with that. Okay, we all make them, but I can't have three making the same mistake. And you try and speak to the fourth official, they don't look at you in the eye, they don't show you, didn't look at me in the eye, won't look at me in the eye. And you go and speak to John at half time, won't speak to you. Wants to speak to you inside, but you're in separate stands. It's impossible.
So what do you want to happen now then in terms of...
I don't want anything to happen. I'll take my medicine, like I do, and we'll move on.
In terms of maybe making it better, a better relationship with the fourth officials, in terms of referees for all managers, is that something that it would help if there was more constructive conversations?
Listen, this is on me. This has got nothing to do with any other manager, any other club. This is on me. This is my situation. I'll go and enjoy this win, and I'll sleep really well tonight. I'll get my team ready for St Mirren. Whatever letters come my way, I'll deal with them.
That's Stephen Gerrard, the centre of attention in the immediate aftermath after his team wins to put themselves on the verge of a first win in a title win in a decade and the ending of Celtic's 9 in a row. But it's about Stevie G getting sent off. So, I mean, maybe it's coincidental, Eoin. Maybe it's coincidental, I don't know. But it's definitely all about Stevie G.
Well, it is. A lot of Rangers is about Stevie G, especially considering we're viewing it through the prism of not being based in Scotland and from the prism of being in Ireland, which is a very Celtic-centric society. Like, I mean, in isolation, not a whole pile of people in Ireland care about Rangers as opposed to Celtic. It's a simple fact, and I presume, there's articles in Sky Sports this morning, for example, about this, and selling things through the angle of Stephen Gerrard is always going to be a more successful technique. So I think it's probably a two-way street. Of course, you could say Stephen Gerrard is making it about himself, but I think the way it's being painted, it makes sense to paint it about Stephen Gerrard as well, because this has been interesting. This has been a very interesting story this season, how Stephen Gerrard is undeniably very good at what he does, and the next step in his management career is going to be fascinating. Yeah,
I guess it's hard for us to decipher just how good he is. I suppose the fact that the European campaign is still going well, that's certainly a feather in his cap. But Celtic have imploded this year and they're so far behind. It would have been interesting to see what would happen if there'd been a title race. But there is none, and essentially with that win, what happened was there was a non-penalty decision made just before half-time. Stephen Gerrard went over and argued at half-time as everybody walked off, and he got booked, and he kept arguing and got booked again. So the 2 yellows, technically a red card for dissent is a 2-match ban generally. 2 yellows might be 1-match ban, so who knows? We'll wait and see. But he might not be on the touchline when they actually win the league against Celtic. So we'll see what happens. OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock. We've got football with Phil in just a second. Sports pages coming your way around about 7:50. Andy Mitten at 8:10. John Duggan at 8:35. the NBA All-Stars with Haley O'Shaughnessy, and then our Cheltenham countdown with Thom Malone. Quiet week for racing, and then OTB's TV picks with Sue. That's coming up just after 9:10 this morning. Now, Phil Egan, good morning to you. How are you?
How are you doing, Ger?
You sat through Burnley and Leicester. How was that?
Actually, the first half was pretty enjoyable. I think one thing we've noticed in the last few games is they're just not as good. The zip has gone out of a lot of games, and I think it's something Solskjaer referenced after the United game against Palace last night, that players are starting to look tired. And this isn't just United, this is across the league. This is squads being decimated with injuries. The only ones who have managed this very well are Manchester City, and they've the best squad. And you look at the bench that they were able to, the players they were able to leave on the bench for the game against Wolves the other night. So yeah, the first half of Burnley and Leicester was good, but it probably helped the fact that Burnley got an early goal, and it meant Leicester had to really come out and look. Leicester have the best away record in the league this season, so they're no mugs away from home. But again, they're one of those teams that are suffering from injuries. No Harvey Barnes, no James Maddison. They gift Burnley a goal, and when you go behind against Burnley, it's not great because they've got something to hold on to. But in fairness, Leicester got back into the game. They got their goal, brilliant goal from Iheanacho. Some people will question why Pope came out, but he probably didn't think Iheanacho was going to volley first time, so he probably thought, when he takes his first touch, I'll be there before he gets a second touch. But Iheanacho volleyed it in. First time was brilliant. And Burnley could have won it. Schmeichel had to pull off a couple of good saves, but the title race is done. But the race for the top four, yet again, looks like it's going to go right down to the wire.
Yeah, is there any possibility that the race for relegation is also somewhat in doubt? I mean, if Sheffield United were to pull it off from here, they beat Villa 1-0 last night, that would be remarkable. But Newcastle are falling like a stone.
Yeah.
And, I mean, 12 points in 13 games. It's been done before.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Sheffield United, I think, are done. But certainly tonight's games, there's definitely a lot on the line. West Brom obviously play Everton. West Brom were absolutely blessed to beat Brighton on Saturday. Obviously, Brighton missed 2 penalties. Lewis Dunk's goal is disallowed. Maybe this is the start of a run that Sam Allardyce and West Brom can put together. But if they were to win tonight, or even get a draw against Everton, they play Newcastle at the weekend. Newcastle are now missing Almiron, Sam Maximan and Callum Wilson. Reports as well out of the Newcastle camp that Steve Bruce and Matt Ritchie had a fight in training on Tuesday because apparently Matt Ritchie didn't follow tactical instructions, which led to the equaliser against Wolves the other day. So, they weren't too happy.
Matt Ritchie was calling Steve Bruce a coward.
A coward, yeah. So, look, there's always fights on the training ground. Things get heated, but the worry is that these stories are starting to get out. And, there was a lot of pressure on Steve Bruce before the start of the season. We know a lot of fans are unhappy with him. They've tried to change things up. Graham Jones has come in, the coach, and you can see that they've tried to be a bit more attacking, but unfortunately they're getting too many injuries. And now they're missing players that score goals for them, and they're getting dragged into it. I said, if they were to lose to West Brom at the weekend, then they are right in it. I still think they are in it because they just don't have enough goals in them at the moment.
Sam Maximan looks pretty good, doesn't he?
He's brilliant, but the problem is they can't keep him fit. And he went off injured the other day again. But yeah, I love watching him. Obviously, Callum Wilson was brought in, and he'd scored a few important goals. I think back to the game against Everton when they won at Goodison Park. Callum Wilson scored both goals that day. And they have some decent players, but just haven't been able to string too many good performances in there. One of the positives from an Irish point of view is Kieran Clark is a regular now in the back four, and he's playing quite well.
Yeah, and we need him. It was a mixed night, you would say, from Stephen Kenny's perspective. It starts out really well with James McCarthy starting again for the first time in a long time. Is it a second start? And what was the stat? Was it second start in months anyway? McGoldrick, who isn't in the squad anymore, is not available to him. Do you make an SOS call and say, look, you're playing really well? There's no way. I mean, you might go down anyway, so the good chance that whatever deal you'd struck or Chris Wilder about a contract, they're going to honour that because they're going to need you for the championship. Come on.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, the goal was so good because obviously it starts with McGoldrick dropping deep, which we know he likes to do. Fizzes one across the pitch and then gets on the end of it. Brilliant goal. And he's actually been scoring goals in the Premier League this season. He couldn't really do it last season. But Yeah, there was that rumour when, remember, he'd deleted certain things off his profile on Instagram. We thought, oh, here we go, he's coming back. But how we'd love him in the team, because we all picked our teams last week, and obviously McGoldrick wasn't in it, but we had different players up front. Nobody really knew what to do up front. David McGoldrick would obviously take that away from Stephen Kenny, knowing that he had him available. He's a nailed-on starter. With James McCarthy, actually, I know when myself, Stephen, and Nathan picked their teams, Nathan had him in the team. Myself and Stephen kind of shied away from it because we just didn't trust his fitness, and lo and behold, he has to come off. And that's just unfortunately the story for James McCarthy. We just don't see the best of him anymore because he can't string games together.
Played 62 minutes. We don't know the details on the injury, and hopefully it's not too serious, but it's very close to the game at this point, and you'd be very concerned about it. How inept are Manchester United? How good were they? Where on that level of where they need to be? How far along are they?
Well, the problem is a 0-0 draw for the third time in the space of 6 days, and I think you'll be going through the papers. Best headline I've seen is blankety blank, a reference to blankety blank. If people remember that, there's been so many.
Owen hasn't a clue what that is.
Well, surely Owen was watching the remake version, which Bradley Walsh did at the end, a Christmas special, blankety blank. But yeah, they just, when United don't have that zip about them, they just don't obviously look as good. And Marcus Rashford getting a lot of criticism. Solskjaer said it after the game. They did look tired, and I think you look back at the second leg of the Europa League tie against Real Sociedad last week, and a lot of people were surprised with Solskjaer's starting 11. Bruno Fernandes was in it. He went strong in a tie that was already wrapped up. Now, Solskjaer could argue that, yeah, you're 4-0 up, but if you put out a second string team and you get thumped 3-0, even though you go through, it might dent the confidence of a few players and want to keep a bit of rhythm going. But everyone's going through this at the moment, and this is just a season that I think when the fans come back and we start to feel football is normal again, then I think we'll look back on this season and say, yeah, wasn't it mad that we kind of got suckered into watching these games that there's no fans in. I don't know, like I'm still watching games with the crowd noise is on. Maybe it's just a distraction, but yeah, it was pretty flat last night from United, and maybe the best thing that happened for the last few minutes was the fog descended on Sellers Park, and we didn't actually really get to see that much of it. Literally
and metaphorically, of course. Blankety blank, they used to give you'd win a blankety blank checkbook and pen. And as a kid, I was like, wow, a checkbook, you get to write checks. And then it was explained to me, no, it's literally just a piece of paper with the words blankety blank printed on them, because no one's going to take any of your blankety blank checks. They're literally worthless. Yeah.
If anyone hasn't seen it, it was ahead of its time back in the day. Terry Wogan obviously started it. I know, I can remember Lily Savage doing it.
Oh, right. I didn't even remember Les Dawson. I didn't know Terry Wogan.
Les Dawson, yeah. Who forgot Les Dawson before Lily Savage? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And obviously Bradley Walsh. I think somebody mentioned to me this morning, David Williams did a version of it as well. So, yeah, all these good things get remaked.
And some rubbish too. Chelsea against Liverpool tonight. This isn't the two very similar styles. There's like a significant enough difference. Certainly Miguel Delaney's pointing out, and I guess Tuchel wants to point out the difference, that he's not just a Klopp clone.
Definitely not. No, absolutely not. I mean, the closest thing to a Klopp clone in the Premier League at the moment is Ralph Hasenhüttl. But with Tuchel and Klopp, yeah, obviously the Dortmund thing and Mainz as well. And it's, do you know what? I think Liverpool fans are starting to feel a little bit more confident now, because you look at who's starting to become available, and maybe with the injuries that have happened, that some of the players coming back actually might give Liverpool a chance of finishing top four. I think if they win tonight, I would be a lot more confident Liverpool will finish top four. But if they draw, and they obviously play Fulham at the weekend, they definitely have given themselves a chance. Jota might feature. We expect to see Alisson and Fabinho back. What does he do with Fabinho? Does he throw him back in centre half, or does he say, look, there's nothing going on in midfield in terms of protection, so he puts him in centre mid? But then he has to go with Kabak and Phillips centre half. Chelsea haven't really been that fluid in terms of goals, but very hard to play against. They're very hard to beat. Obviously, haven't lost under Tuchel. They've only conceded 2 goals. So it'll be interesting to see if Liverpool, those tactical tweaks they made against Sheffield United, will they use those against Chelsea? And if they do, what will that Robertson factor bring down the Chelsea right-hand side?
Well, we'll await with bated breath what happens and who actually gets picked as well. Good stuff. Thanks a million, Phil. Talk to you.
Cheers, lads.
Phil Egan, you can follow his stuff on OTBSports.com and on the OTB Sports app all day. It is bang on 7:55 this morning. If you want to get in touch with us, we'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the number. You can always leave a comment for us on the YouTube stream, or you can tweet us at OffTheBallAM is the Twitter handle for the show this morning. Loads more still to come. We're going to run you through the sports pages in just a moment.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
OTB.
Long ball forward for Shaqiri to run onto. First time cross to Salah. He controls it and puts it past Fabianski. And that is a superb Liverpool counter-attacking goal.
OTB live commentary. Never miss the action right here on OTB Sports Radio. Keep up to date with the latest scores on the OTB Sports app. The OTB Sports app. Live score updates straight to your phone.
Tom Watson, you're welcome to Golf Weekly.
Hey, this is going to be fun.
Very happy to say European captain and, of course, three-time major winner Padraig Harrington joins us.
Today's special guest on Golf Weekly is Lee Westwood.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I'm honoured and delighted.
Let's bring in Paul McGinley, who joins us now. Paul, you're very welcome.
Shane Lowry, how are you keeping?
I'm good, thanks, yeah. Well, I'm as good as I can be.
The biggest names in golf and Ireland's best golf podcast, Golf Weekly, now exclusively available on Patreon. Go to otbsports.com/Golf Weekly to sign up now.
Get ready for the Cheltenham Festival with the Boyle Sports app, with a special offer guaranteed on every race, every day of the festival, plus extra places on each way bets over all 4 days. The Boyle Sports app has got you covered. Need to study up? Check out our Racing Post insights or watch our exclusive video previews with Cheltenham Gold Cup winning jockey Robbie Power. The Cheltenham Festival on the faster than ever Boyle Sports app. Boyle Sports. This is betting. Gamble responsibly. See gamblingcare.ie. 18 plus.
Now, what's going to fill that gap in your life? Because 12 years a dub, like tangled up in blue for that long, and you really were, Paddy. You know, you'd have time on your hands now. How are you going to fill that, or have you thought about that?
Well, I'm already. I'd say the All-Ireland final was the 19th of December, and there was a couple of weeks over Christmas where you're obviously at home and stuff like that. Whereas I'm kind of back into training already now, but definitely a more leisurely type of training. You know, inter-county football for like say 12 years can be quite tough on the body and stuff like that. But if I didn't train for 2 or 3 weeks clean, I'd feel sluggish nearly. You know,
so physically. Yeah.
I do quite a lot of cycling now. I'm starting to kind of get into that. I plan on playing a bit of soccer, I suppose, with my friends around the area as well, and kind of just so more normal activities. Like definitely will be staying active, and when gyms open back up and things like that, kind of train 2 or 3 times a week, but at my own
but at your own
pace, and definitely not GAA related training. You know, running up hills.
Yeah, you're back in Timmy Street.
Yeah, or on pitches or anything like that. I that doesn't appeal to me.
So it's going to be for pure enjoyment now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Yeah, always really interesting to hear from Paddy Andrews there in conversation with Cliona Foley in the ad break about the many benefits of cycling. AXA Community Bike Rides offer group rides all over the country, and while these are currently on hold to keep everybody safe, you can still get out and feel good by taking part in a solo ride. Whether you're a keen cyclist or you're looking for a reason to get back in the saddle, you can choose a level and go at a pace that works for you. Couldn't be easier. Sign up for a solo bike ride at axacommunitybikerides.com and start earning rewards for taking part. Again, love to hear from you this morning. 0879 180 180. Let's run through the headlines in the papers, and we'll start with otbsports.com. The shout came Euphenian, and then it's 4 letters. Kevin Kilbane talking about the sectarian abuse that he suffered very early on in his career, and it was very strong in that last night on the football show. You can listen back to that on the OTB Sports app or wherever you get your podcasts. Ireland have no threat with Sexton and Murray. Stuart Barnes saying the time for that partnership to be broken up has come. Is it the second most capped partnership in World Rugby history? Italian icon Roberto Baggio subject of a new Netflix film. And that's good. Baggio is one of those players who probably hasn't been enough written about and enough talked about. A really, really interesting character, not your stereotypical Italian footballer of the 1990s. And Rodgers laments injuries as Leicester drop points at Burnley. Everybody's giving out about the injuries at the moment. So, and obviously that goal from McGoldrick is also on the otbsports.com website. The Daily Mirror, I've already talked about it. United stuck on zebra crossing. Picture of Luke Shaw and a zebra together at last, so that you can make the connection between the zebra shirt and an actual zebra. You know, it's difficult to see that shirt and go, oof, I wonder what animal is it? Maybe it's a giraffe. Giraffes are good at camouflage. Or it could be a crocodile, I suppose. In the water, you can't really see them. But no, it's a zebra. And the Mirror are telling you that it's a zebra, because you wouldn't have worked it out. Snub versus country is their other headline, which is excellent. Klopp is the first Prem boss to ban stars from playing in internationals if they face risk of being forced into quarantine. This is actually a huge story, Eoin, I think. Like, Jurgen Klopp has banned international football, and he says FIFA have agreed with them. He's just gone, no, if you're going to one of those countries that's in the red zone, you've got to come back and quarantine for 10 days, then I'm not letting you go. And he says FIFA have just okayed this, and so what's going to happen is that there might be no CONMEBOL international fixtures. Just, that's it. Which, in a way, is kind of fair enough.
It's amazing the power that he has. It's redless countries that he said that they can't go to, because obviously there's just an additional quarantine time. And like, we are reaching a pivotal point in the season now where if any games get called off, you're kind of screwed, to be honest. There's not going to be another window to get in postponed games. Premier League are already chasing their tail. Champions League, Liverpool are still involved in. And like, if they're forced to postpone another game, then the whole thing is done. Like, I do think that the previous international window was really close to causing a much bigger disaster than it was. It caused a lot of issues, as Ireland well know, but it came close to having far-reaching consequences. Like, I'm not sure we out of the woods enough in different parts of the globe for this to be a risk worth taking at this point, especially when the country that they're flying from has red listed those countries that they're flying to. So, yeah, Klopp is right, but it's amazing how much power he actually wields, that an order from Jurgen Klopp could lead to the shutdown of certain international fixtures.
Blankety Mank is the back page headline on the Star this morning, as Phil's already talked about a little bit earlier on. United failed to find the net for the third game in a row. Elliott horses can run, so the British Horse Racing Authority, not quite sure if they acted a little bit fast last week, because all of a sudden they realised that if they don't let the Elliott horses run, which would mean you know, stuff like Presenting Percy wouldn't be able to run, all the Jigginstown horses wouldn't be able to run. Our intention is not to stop horses running. We want to see the best horses run at Cheltenham, says James Given, the BHA's Director of Equine Health and Welfare. At the moment, it's only a temporary sanction, depending on what the Irish authorities come up with. There may well be an appeal process that may delay things again, but that said, it's our intention to get the best horses racing at the festival, so we'll take each position when it comes along, taking each game on its merits there. The Star also have a pull-out today about the summer of 1998, which is the summer of the Offaly Clare trilogy. And there's Sherlock Nan. One of the children told a shopkeeper in Waterford that I was principal in his school. They were refused service and told to get out. The kids were refused an ice cream because I was their teacher. I'm like, wow, that is awesome. This is... as usual, great stuff from Sherlock Nan. It's a double-page spread, so make some time in your day to read that, and it's well worth digging out. Great stuff from Kieran Cunningham as well there. So Klopp down. That's what the Sun say. That's Jurgen Klopp shutting down world football. Cop boss wants internationals grounded. Jurgen, we can't have 10-day quarantine, and 3-0 United. Except obviously it was 0-0, so because it's the third game in a row. You know. Just need to explain these things sometimes, it turns out, because you don't know what a zebra is. Lions lineup, all-star coaching team. This is a story, this is a big story from the Daily Telegraph that is in some of the other papers, although they claim it's an exclusive, but it's not in too many of the Irish papers this morning. Andy Farrell is going to be part of and he's going to reveal today at his run-of-the-mill press conference, I think, that he is going to be part of Warren Gatlin's. Warren Gatland plans to assemble the most formidable coaching lineup witnessed in British and Irish Lions history, featuring Scotland head coach Gregor Townsend, his Ireland counterpart Andy Farrell, and England's defensive guru John Mitchell. They're also going to add in Steve Borthwick and somebody else. Who's the other one? Graham Rowntree from Munster, Neil Jenkins, and Steve Borthwick. What do you think, Eoin?
This is like the Avengers coming together to form the most incredible team ever known to mankind. This is going to get a 3-hour blockbuster movie, which is rated at 7.5 on IMDb. This is absolutely incredible stuff. Gregor Townsend, Andy Farrell, John Mitchell, Steve Borthwick, Graham Rowntree, Neil Jenkins. It's a who's who of rugby coaches. If you're not on this list, you're clearly not doing very well at test level, unless you actually just don't want to be involved in the British and Irish Lions at this point. All these minds are going to come together to absolutely smash the USA in a midweek fixture. I, for one, cannot wait.
No Wayne Pivac, no none of that backroom
Eddie
team.
Jones.
No Eddie Jones.
Eddie Jones has, I'm pretty sure, said in the past that the Lions doesn't suit him, unless, of course, Warren Gatland stepped aside and said, you can hop on in there, Eddie, and take the main job. But because there is a sense of parking your ego to be Warren Gatland's subordinate on this coaching ticket. And I think it's the first time since, is it McGeechan, that a Scot has actually been involved in the backroom team of an actual Lions tour. So there's great opportunities here for different coaches. It's good to see, I think, from an Irish perspective, Andy Farrell going in here. I think that he's probably the type of guy who acts as a sponge when he needs to act like a sponge, and I'm sure there are certain things that you pick up in this sort of environment. So that certainly can't hurt from an Irish perspective. It's incredible, the list that they've put together, and hopefully it's for something meaningful. Just
a counterpoint, right? What if you go and you tell everybody what your defensive system is, and then they're like, oh, thanks very much, Andy, and then the next time they play you for the next 4 years, they're like, well, when we did this Lions thing, he took us aside and he said, this is how they like to, shoot up around the edges, or this is what they do to get on the good side of the referee. Is there a little bit of the sharing of knowledge? And it's all, the concern is when you're the head coach and you know everything, that it's a little bit one way and there's not that much to be gained from watching the players in training?
Well, maybe, but the thing is, Andy Farrell was defence coach for the last Lions tour, and Ireland went out and won the Grand Slam the following year. So I'm not sure it actually made that much of a difference to people figuring out.
But then they worked us out eventually. England just came and brought Manu Tuilagi and the Vinipolas, and they were like, look, we just squashed them. Let's just squash them.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't read into that too much. Maybe everybody is actually so paranoid about giving away their secrets that not much coaching is done at all. And if we go back to listen to Sean O'Brien from 2017, maybe that is the case.
The beef is real. I'd forgotten that. Of course, good point. Well, look, I would tend to agree with you that the opportunity for him to work with the players that he's going to be coming up against over the next couple of years is really good. That actually, in the long run, it benefits. I mean, it's the same, I suppose, from Townsend's perspective. It's going to be very interesting. Ireland have been drawn against Scotland again in the World Cup, and the two lads are going to be, see you in 18 months.
And the context around it then, as well as what will happen in a couple of weeks, because you'd imagine if Scotland actually get the job done against Ireland, whatever it is, that Saturday or Sunday week, then that kind of changes the power dynamic in that relationship a little bit, because let's face it, I was just about to wander down the path where I was about to absolutely slam an opponent that Ireland haven't.
Go on.
The fact of the matter is that Ireland have beaten Scotland a lot in recent years.
Routinely. They're rubbish.
If Scotland, a very good Scotland team, we know that they're very good this year, beat Ireland the weekend after this one, then I think that power dynamic shifts immediately. And then Warren Gatland goes into, or not Warren Gatland, then Andy Farrell goes into the Lions coaching staff, and it's like, what have you got, Gregor? What are you planning in 2023?
Yeah. So you're in favour?
Oh yeah. I don't.
It's a win-win.
I don't see any reason not to do it. In the minute chance that this actually goes to South Africa, never begrudge a man a chance to actually get a trip to South Africa anyway, is what I would say. For the sake of trying to keep your cards close to your chest, not worth it for me. I think that there's probably more to be gained than anything else. It's not going to be in South Africa anyway. I'd be astonished if that was the case. So it's probably going to be a home Lions tour. It's probably not going to be as labour intensive because you don't have to travel all the way across the world. I don't know. I think that if you're a coach who's still learning, which I think Andy Farrell is, I don't think it's a bad thing to go and spend some time at Warren Gatland.
No, it could actually, in that aspect of it, be a bit of a hothouse to get back to that stage where, okay, you get to go and have proper conversations with peers and say, here, listen, this has been happening to us. What would you do in a similar scenario? Or you've had some dealings with the Blazers in the IRFU. How did that work out for you? What did you learn from that, Warren? Or what did you do differently with the Welsh than you did with the Irish? Might be a better way of talking about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that there is that culture of sharing ideas within rugby as well. And I think Gatland is now in the perfect stage of his career for you to pick those brains. Like, I mean, 2017, that was not the case. If anybody was going to be guarded in 17, it might have been Warren Gatland himself. Now, things might be different, that this is the chance for you to actually go and maybe see what he's got to say.
Okay, the other big story is in the Examiner this morning. John Fallon was tweeting about it yesterday as well. FAI bid to save Euro games in Dublin as UEFA decision nears, and essentially UEFA are asking for information sooner rather than later. Their conceding capacity crowds across the continent are unrealistic. They last week informed host cities of a minimum partial attendance of 25%. That would be 12,000 fans in the Aviva for the games featuring Poland, Slovakia and Sweden. Our capital was one of a dozen home venues, and the FAI Chief Executive Jonathan Hill confirmed on Friday Dublin's survival as a host venue hinged on supporters being allowed into Lansdowne Road, informed delegates on Tuesday of talks on the subject with public health authorities. So I think they're still planning on having the games here, but ultimately the decision will be based on UEFA thinking that they'll get 12,500 fans into the grounds. Are they definitely going to get 12,500 fans into the grounds in the other 9 stadiums that they think they will now? Is there no chance of another flare-up in a couple of months' time as a new strain arrives? You know, I'd say that there needs to be contingency plan A, B and C for this.
Yeah, and the thing is, this probably needs to be the number one priority in all of these countries. Like in terms of, like, so if you're saying to yourself, what can we allow for? So, for example, Ireland last year decided we can allow for a social Christmas, and we've been paying the price for it ever since. Every country needs to get together and say, we will allow for a half-decent European Championships. And that way they will allow 12,000 people into stadiums. And that way there will inevitably be a spike because in many of those countries there won't be a good enough vaccination program just yet, just by the time the games actually kick off. Whether or not that's going to happen, I'm not so sure. It would require a lot of governments moving football up to a place in the priority list that a lot of people probably won't see as acceptable. I can't see it going down too well here if this country is still in a state of not even close to half open, and suddenly you've got 12,000 fans popping into the Aviva Stadium. So it's going to be a massive conflict on that level. But like then again, you look at the UK and they seem, England in particular, they're pretty confident of actually hosting the entire thing. The UEFA are very reluctant to actually grant them that, and I'm not sure how that's actually going to develop over the next little while, because in fairness, there's one country who might be able to look most likely to do it and get 12,000 or get a quarter of a capacity stadiums in. It probably is England at this point.
Capital loss, that's the back page headline in the Mail. Dublin set to be ditched as Euro host city, and presenting Percy owner sticks with Elliott. So this is the latest news from yesterday. Under fire, Gordon Elliott received timely support from owner Philip Reynolds, who will continue to entrust the care of his horses with the embattled trainer. Reynolds has 8 horses at Elliott's County Meath yard, including presenting Percy. Believes the scars of the week are the ultimate punishment for the trainer ahead of his IHRB disciplinary hearing tomorrow. While acknowledging shock at the photo, accepting this as a one-time error of judgment, I will stay with Gordon, and I hope we can all find it in our hearts not to destroy him. None of us has a monopoly on shock, horror, disappointment, anger and sadness, and having spent my life owning horses and in the pet industry, believe me, in this case, I own as much of those feelings as anybody else. That hearing tomorrow will be very interesting. You know, I think it'll be interesting to see what they think is justice in this scenario, because obviously they have it within their gift to ruin his career forever, or to come up with some arrangement which allows him to continue working. The Irish Independent, Russell rules out hands-on training role in Elliott Yard. This is a Michael Verney exclusive. He's been talking with Davy Russell, who's poured cold water on totally unfounded rumours he's poised to take up a hands-on role in Gordon Elliott's powerful training operation. And Dublin's still hoping to retain Euro host role, but FAI up against it. That's the story from the Dan McDonnell on the back of the Irish Independent this morning. It is, 14 minutes past 8 this morning. OTB AM, live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Andy Mitten is with us this morning. Good morning to you, Andy. How are you?
Good morning. Okay, good to join you.
We've been talking a little bit about just the general quality of football across the Premier League, and how a bit of the zip, with the exception obviously of Manchester City, has gone out of it for most teams. Even Leicester last night, as Phil pointed out earlier on, they've got the best away record in the Premier League, and they just couldn't bring anything in that second half against Burnley. Are Manchester United part of what's happening generally? Is there the general malaise, or is there a malaise that's more specific to Manchester United at the moment?
I asked Ole Gunnar the day before the game quite an open question about whether any players had surprised him this season. And he replied that as a collective, the whole squad had impressed him in so much as the difficult times. They don't have a social life. They can't go to the cinema, to a concert, for a meal. And he used the word relentless. Now, when I put that out, you got a predictable response of, if I earn millions of pounds a week, blah, blah, blah. But it is relentless. So this time last year, Manchester United had just come back from a break in Marbella. And I know that really worked for them. I saw it with my own eyes. The first game back, after that break, I saw Ed Woodward go up to Ole Gunnar in the tunnel at Stamford Bridge and say, Marbella again next season. And Ole was enthusiastic. Yeah, because it had worked. Bruno had settled in. The players had bonded well. And there's none of that now. So United are suffering, but all teams are suffering. United are still second. You wonder how, given the poor recent form and the number of points being dropped, but the team are still second. But the performances have been poor in the last 6 weeks. I think it's 3 wins from the last 10 league matches. I think 4 of the last 5 away games have been 0-0 draws. And the low points keep getting lower. West Brom a few weeks ago was really bad. I mean, West Brom, who cannot get a win, drew against Manchester United. And then the 0-0 at Crystal Palace. It was just dreadful. Just a terrible performance. So you're quite rightly asking why. Fatigue, yeah. I don't know whether that is responsible for 10% of that poor performance or 40% of that performance. I need to ask some questions about that. And it's frustrating for fans because go back 6 weeks, the team were top of the league and just beating Liverpool and things were looking good, but we're still on this yo-yo cycle of boom and bust. And that frustrates fans. But then, they look at Manchester City and that makes them probably even more depressed because City are just winning everything and will probably canter off into the distance, not just this season. But then they look at Liverpool and Liverpool have been even worse than the teams around them, including Manchester United. As we speak, the team is second, still in the FA Cup, still in the Europa League, not the Champions League, I might add. But everything feels a little bit flat. And you wonder how United are going to get out of this poor form. Maybe the team's missing players who've been absent. I think Cavani, he came back, but he looked rusty. Paul Pogba was doing very well before he got injured. And you just look at that performance against Palace and think, who could have changed that game? And Pogba would certainly be one of those players, a fit Pogba. But he wasn't there and he couldn't. And United took 1 point from 6 against Palace this season. And that's just not good enough for a team who's got aspirations of competing for the title. Not this year, but certainly next year. It's just not good enough. It's way, way short of the levels which are required.
There's been a lot mentioned about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and potentially a little bit of a philosophy shift, especially when it comes to the games against the rest of the Big Six. That statistic has been thrown around quite a lot over the last few days, especially in the draw against Chelsea. Are you seeing that manifest itself in the games against the rest of the league as well, Andy, where they are being a little bit more cautious?
If you look at the results against the lower teams recently, 1-1 against West Brom, 0-0 against Palace, the home defeat against Sheffield United, that seemed like more of a freak result, to be honest, compared to the other ones. But the bottom line is, if the football is dull, then the manager loses the fans. That happened with Van Gaal, it happened with Mourinho. And fans want to be entertained. It's Manchester United. It's not unreasonable to expect the team not to go to West Brom or Palace and get a win. Now, there are mitigating factors like we've talked about. The team is still second in the league, but it's gone flat. You cannot pretend otherwise. And I feel that Ole needs a trophy this season. That will help him hugely. But if the season just disintegrates into nothingness, and if United are not careful, they'll fall out of that top 4. And that'd be a major, major problem. Fortunately for United, the rest are worse than United at the moment. So you mentioned Leicester. West Ham's performance dips. Liverpool still haven't got back on track. That Chelsea 0-0 draw, that result was actually better for United than it was for Chelsea. It's Chelsea who need to make the ground up because they've been so bad they got rid of their manager. So that 0-0 wasn't a bad result for Manchester United. And it was a marginally better game than the very poor game at Old Trafford earlier on this season. But too many of those poor games and the fans will start to lose faith. There's a really good spell after that terrible start to the season when United surged up the league table. Top scorers in the league, still the second top scorers in the league. But the forwards are not scoring. The top scorer is attacking midfielder Bruno Fernandes. Even Bruno, the best player by far in the last year, has gone off the boil. So it all leads back into that point about fatigue. They're not doing it on purpose, are they? They're not going to Palace to play badly on purpose. I was at Palace last July after the team had been refreshed after the lockdown, and it was a very different performance to the one in the fog on Wednesday night. Partly because it was in July and it was a sunny summer's evening. But you get the point. The team are in a pretty poor position at the moment, and they've got to get out of it because they're running out of games. Now, if the season ended now, second, people would accept that. But the performances, as much as the results have been disappointing lately.
One of the subplots of the last couple of days, Andy, has been Ole Gunnar Solskjaer post the Chelsea game, getting pretty wound up about the refereeing and about the conspiracies that have been thrown out there about Manchester United. Do you think that there is airs of Alex Ferguson here when Solskjaer talks about refs?
I don't mind him getting angry and challenging decisions. I think he's within his right to challenge that penalty which wasn't given for the handball at Stamford Bridge at the weekend, or when Chelsea's players come in behind the referee as he judges a VAR decision. And sometimes, at least publicly, because certainly not in private, at least publicly, he's too nice and too well balanced. And Fergie, who is obviously his great mentor, wasn't like that. I think there's two things here. Yeah, more of it is not a bad thing. I don't think you'll find fans complaining about that if he's fighting for the club's cause. But secondly, football has changed. You know, Ollie couldn't do things that Fergie did. He couldn't treat the media. You can't just ban the media because they write something that you don't like Sir Alex Ferguson would do. And Ferguson was this winning machine and one of the greatest managers in history. But football has changed very subtly, even in the 8 years since he retired. Players have changed. What you can get away with players, you know, Fergie was famous for his hairdryer. You're not going to get away with that as much now, I don't think, because society has changed. There'd be accusations that you can't talk to me like that. This is bullying. So Ollie's not stupid. He knows. I mean, he's got a good handle on the fact that the players are going through a pandemic, and footballers will be the last group of people who the general public have sympathy for. But, you know, I spoke to a couple of them last week. Bruno Fernandes just moved to England with his family, and within a month, he's in lockdown, living in a new country. And it's not just Bruno, it's his family. It's his daughter. You're living in a new country, and your schooling's being compromised, and it's not easy. And I'm sorry, but having a big paycheck just doesn't solve all that. And I remember speaking to the wife of one player 10 years ago, and she described it as being a golden prison. She was away from her family. She didn't really have any friends. And if you're in the time of the pandemic, it doesn't make things any better. It just makes things worse. Their family can't come and visit them because they're not allowed into the UK now. Unless they do, you know, that hotel quarantine, which is very difficult, or the 10-day quarantine, which is very difficult. Not that there's flights, you know, the flight schedules have been cut right down. So there's lots of negative external factors. And it's the same for any Premier League club. So maybe they're all becoming as bad as each other, but sometimes a team does have to win a football match. But your first point is correct. There's so many bad performances And it just feels like, I'm normally at games, but I'm watching a lot more on television this season, and every single night, it's not just the Premier League. The Premier League is pushing, we had a Premier League, we're the biggest league in the world, but so is La Liga, so is Serie A, so is the Bundesliga. And I'm from a generation where if one game of football was on once a week, that was a big event and you tune in for it. And now, I'm seeing like 7 per night. So there's so much football.
Yeah.
Maybe fatigue sets in with the fans as well.
I think it definitely does. Can I? There's one comparison that I want to make. The Liverpool fans are rightly pointing to the loss of one of the best defenders in the world as the catastrophic reason for their season falling apart. That does give all of the rest of the team a bit of a free pass, right? That's kind of the argument that we've been having with Liverpool fans, and their knock on is like, oh, all of their centre backs are gone, and so all of their midfielders end up playing there, and then the midfield is robbed of its protective structure and its ability to run games, and therefore the whole team suffers. They've scored loads of goals, mind you, and they still have a striker who's playing unbelievably well. I was thinking about Manchester United's situation. Is there something in the fact that Man United don't fully trust their central defensive partnership just yet, and that they're constantly, in those big games in particular, picking 2 defensive midfielders, and that we haven't yet seen them come up with a defined Ole Gunnar Solskjaer attacking style, where at the moment it seems they're quite happy to give the opposition 70% possession and go straight and try and be rapier-like, and it's a thrust, and it's definitely a way of playing, but it's not going to control games over the course of a season. It might win you a Champions League in a smash-and-grab season, and if everything goes your way, but it's going to be very difficult to see how you'll win a Premier League title that way. Does it actually come back to not trusting the central defensive partnership? Because that's why you pick your defensive central midfielders the whole time, and that's why you don't give them the licence to add extra bodies to attack. And that means that everything has to go through Bruno, and the opposition know this, and that's why the best teams are able to defend against him. It's not that he's playing badly in those games, it's that he's got no support.
There's been an over-reliance on Bruno. United do not have a central defender who's as good as Virgil van Dijk. I'm not watching Liverpool every week, but I know people who I trust, and they were long describing his signing as transformative. They also spoke very highly of Alisson. I know he's had a bad time of things recently, professionally and personally, but I was at the 2019 Champions League final, and I wrote about the best player on the pitch, and it was Liverpool's goalkeeper. Now, clearly Liverpool have been good enough to win the league, the European Cup, and win the world title. With Manchester United, there is a reason why the club are continuing to look for a new central defender, and it comes back to your point. This isn't Vidic and Ferdinand that we're watching at United in Maguire and Lindelof. You've got Phil Jones who's injured far too much to be of any use to the team. Clearly he doesn't want to be injured, but that's how it is. Eric Bailly is also injury prone. On his day, he's a fantastic player. Is he Vidic class? No, because he's not playing enough. You've got to be playing all the time. Harry Maguire, 7 out of 10, man, but it's not good enough if you're going to play for Manchester United. He's the captain of the team. He frustrates fans with his mistakes. And then you've got Victor Lindelof, who's probably receives even more criticism than Harry Maguire. So collectively, it's not been good enough. There's been mistakes this season. You've got to be great. If you're going to be playing for a top Man United team winning trophies, you've got to have a great central defensive partnership. Bruce and Pallister were outstanding defenders and were trusted. So you use the word trust, and you're right to use that. I think Ollie's making the best of what he's got, but they're looking at central defenders for a reason. They will bring somebody in if the team, the club have their way. They've been looking at several different players, watching them very closely. And then to your point of the 2 defensive midfielders in front of them, that's also frustrating fans now at the moment, because it's seen as, it gives the team a platform to attack, but playing it against Palace, come on. Manchester United should be better than this. And individually, the form of a lot of players has got worse. Fred is not having a great time of things. McTominay's had injuries. Matic was the best player in the team at this time last year, just before lockdown, was one of the 2 or 3 best players, and he's not got to those levels. So I think individually and collectively there are issues there, and the result is the results that you're now seeing from Manchester United. But it is also baffling that this same group of players looked so good and so convincing around that Christmas period and went top of the league. And it looked like there was a title race for a month or 6 weeks, and then City just came to Old Trafford in the League Cup with a better team. And you could maybe say after that one, small margins, but the margins look vast at the moment between City and United. And it's the derby this weekend away at Manchester City.
Andy, I wonder, does it give you a little bit of hope that this is the way this season has gone? So maybe last season, Liverpool could afford to keep a fairly rigid first 11. I know that they had a deep squad in general terms, but they didn't need the level of depth that Manchester City have this season, whereas City have had an injury to their best player, Kevin De Bruyne, and they can get by so easily without that. Next season, there shouldn't be that level of injury. There shouldn't be that level of fatigue, and squad depth probably won't be as necessary. That might close the gap towards Manchester City a little bit if we're clutching at straws here.
I think you're clutching at straws. I'm not feeling particularly hopeful at the moment. I think PSG and Manchester City, given the way they are funded, will just pull away from everybody, including Barcelona, including Madrid. They just do not have the financial issues that every other club have. Manchester United is a commercial juggernaut, albeit one owned by an American family who've got the club in debt from a takeover which should never have been allowed to happen. But even United, and the results will come out later today, have been hit badly by COVID. The club are losing £4 million per home game without fans. And that impacts. I think United actually have been quite lucky with injuries so far this season, quite lucky with the number of players who've caught COVID, because it has been so few. There's been much worse times in terms of injuries. And I did a piece the other day, 5 years on from Marcus Rashford's debut, and I looked at the injuries. There were 13 players out. There's not been that level of injuries. I just think City have got an exceptional manager. They've recruited smarter than United. Yeah, there will be criticism of their ownership, and that will never go away. And I think a lot of Puritan football fans will always have no time for that model, be it at RB Leipzig or at Chelsea or at PSG. But Guardiola is a genius, and City have recruited far better than United. Ruben Dias could have come to Manchester United because City had developed very strong links with Benfica, and they even had senior members of Benfica's coaching staff who'd worked in Manchester at City, because I've spoken to them. They got the player who's looking like he's replaced Van Dijk as the best defender in the league this season. I'm sure Van Dijk will come back and be very, very good, but the time at the moment is for that City team. And if you're asking me if I'm optimistic about Manchester derby, not at all. But there's a big but. I'm an idiot. It's an addiction. And on Sunday, I'm going to absolutely watch it. And when that game starts, I will be convinced that Manchester United are capable of victory. And bizarre that it is, United have won the last 2 games there at City. And in the league last year, Ollie told me that was his best moment as a United fan. Just a shame there hasn't been more of them.
That's the joy of being a proper sports fan. One last thing that I just wanted to bring up before we go. We've been talking about the strikers, and just like it's clear how Cavani is a focal point in the team. And if Cavani was 26 or 28 or even 30, Manchester United fans would be like, yes, this is great. But because he's the age he is, we started to look back, and David Myler was making the point, when was the last time that there was a Golden Boot winner at Manchester United? And we looked it up. It was Van Persie. It was all the way back to Van Persie. Obviously, there have been strikers who scored goals, and Zlatan scored goals, Lukaku scored goals. But if you look at that list of strikers, they've been searching Memphis, Lukaku, Martial, Falcao, Zlatan, Igalo, Cavani. They haven't bought well when it comes to the strikers either.
No, and I think, to be fair to Zlatan, he was successful at United. He scored a lot of goals. I think Cavani's a very good player. He needs to start scoring more goals. He's had his suspension, he's had his injury. He arrived when the season was already underway, and he took a bit of time to get to the levels of fitness. He wasn't ready until end of October, if I remember rightly. And the forwards are not scoring enough goals. That's the premise of your point. United are the second top scorers in the league. They were the top scorers until a week or two ago, but the top scorer is a midfielder, Bruno Fernandes. There is not a prolific centre forward at Manchester United, and there needs to be. Marcus Rashford, not prolific. Anthony Martial's having a shocker of a season. Mason Greenwood scored 1 Premier League goal this season. It's not good enough. It's as simple as that. If you're playing for Manchester United in a forward position, you've got to be scoring more than that. At the best, that attack is young, exciting, fast, beautiful to watch on the counter. But at the end of this season, you'll have to look at the bigger picture, and Ollie will have to decide where is the priority to strengthen his team. And I think that he absolutely wanted Erling Haaland, but he didn't come to Old Trafford. And I can understand the reasons why he didn't come, because United don't want to give ownership over to an agent. But the team is missing a lethal striker, a Van Persie, a Ruud van Nistelrooy. They do play more as a collective, and there were times when the team were too over-reliant on Ruud van Nistelrooy. But if there's a quality number 9 there, there's a quality number 9. Look at how good Atletico have been with Luis Suarez this season. Written off at Barcelona, he's playing for a team who are top of the league, because he's a brilliant number 9. Still, he's not the player that he was, but he's still a brilliant number 9.
I wonder if maybe if they even inquired about Luis Suarez, about what level of madness there would have been if Suarez had signed for Manchester United.
I can think of many players, probably every footballer in the world, who most United fans would rather have at Old Trafford. Then again, Alan Smith came from Leeds United, and it probably wind Liverpool fans up if Luis Suarez had come to Old Trafford to be a success. And football fans are utter hypocrites as well. They change the tunes so quickly. I remember Wayne Rooney, who was a great striker, 2013, he wanted to leave. And I remember getting a call on the 6th of August that year from a radio station in the UK, asking for United fans who would stick up for Rooney. I couldn't find one, not one. It was get him out. And 2 weeks later, when he stayed because United wouldn't sell him, half the fans were singing his name at Swansea away in the first game of the season. And a month later, all the fans were singing his name. So there's ways back for everybody, but I think Suarez at Old Trafford, no, it's not something we're ever going to see. Then again, the club do like aging strikers.
So maybe, just one season too late. Andy, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Thank you.
Enjoy the game at the weekend. It's Andy Mitten giving us some thoughts there this morning. If you want to go and give us your thoughts, 0879 180 180 is the number. OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Here's what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's only sports radio station. At noon, it is our series called It's Not a Sport. They're talking about free diving. That's End of Calls series. It's an hour long. At 1 o'clock today, OTB Gold. If you've missed it, it's Jerry Eisenberg speaking about Muhammad Ali. Our History of Sport lecture series continues from 3 with Paul Rouse. Our retro panel is Ireland versus England in 1995 and the riots with Bernard O'Byrne, Henry Winter and Philip Quinn. OTB Gold at 6 is Centaur, the remarkable story of Declan Murphy, the jockey. And at 7 tonight, John Giles, Damien Delaney and more with Nathan on Thursday nights Off the Ball. Thursday nights always good and worth tuning in for. Right, John Duggan is with us at 8:38 this morning. John, good morning to you. How are you?
Gerrard and Eoin, are we keeping well?
What's going on in the world of sport this morning?
Man United at the zebra crossing, wearing those awful shirts last night. Goalless draw in the fog at Palace. Move on. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer admits the results. Not ideal.
It's a bit of a worry, of course it is. But I know that the boys are giving everything. And that's the thing, we play every 3 days. And I know they're giving everything they've got. So attitude and approach, I'm very happy with. The quality, we need to get back to what we know we can do, yeah.
Probably too many games. James McCarthy going off in that one. So United, 7-point cushion over 5th at the moment, but they're in a position now where they're being chased in those race for the top 4 rather than chasing Manchester City, who they play on Sunday. Dave McGoldrick scoring for Sheffield United, a 1-0 win over Aston Villa, 1-1 between Burnley and Leicester. You have to maybe worry about Leicester's recent form. Liverpool, Chelsea tonight, 8:15 at Anfield. Alisson, Fabinho and possibly Diogo Jota returning for the Reds. Fulham, Spurs, West Brom and Everton. And Liverpool boss Jurgen Klopp doesn't want to release his players on international duty at the end of this month.
we cannot let the boys just go and then sort the situation when they come back, or visit our players in a 10-day quarantine in a hotel or whatever. That's just not possible. I understand the need of the different FAs, but this is a time where you cannot make everybody happy. So, and we have to admit that the players are paid by the clubs.
And FIFA have given an exemption for the clubs not to release the players. I think we're seeing in some South America, for example, they might postpone their qualifiers, but it would affect Alisson, Fabinho, Firmino, Diogo Jota, Naby Keita, these types of players. Norwich 10 points clear at the top of the championship, beating Brentford 1-0 last night, and Rangers defeating Livingston 1-0 as they continue their procession to the Scottish Premiership. Philip Reynolds, the owner of racehorses, the son of the late Albert Reynolds, the Taoiseach, came out in support of Gordon Elliott yesterday. We have stripped him bare and flogged him in public. The scars of this week are his ultimate punishment, ones that live with him long after we've moved on to the next event. For all these reasons, and accepting this is a one-time error of judgment, I will stay with Gordon. I hope we can all find it in our hearts not to destroy him. He is only human. And Keith Donoghue, we've had him on the programme before, the Grade 1 winning jockey. He is the work rider of Envoy Allen, the horse that was moved out of Gordon Elliott's yard and transferred to Henry de Bromhead this week. He said that of the scenes to the Racing Post, I've never in my life seen so many grown men cry, actually shedding tears. It was horrific stuff altogether. This is about the horses leaving the yard and Gordon Elliott to find out his fate tomorrow from the IHRB. But sympathy now for Gordon Elliott, given the social media opprobrium that he's received in recent days. The lads, the Arnold Palmer Invitational, Rory McIlroy, Shane Lowry, Padraig Harrington, Graham McDowell, all in the field, teeing off in Bay Hill in Florida on the US Tour later. McIlroy is a past winner of the event alongside Tyrrell Hatton and Francesco Molinari. Interesting because I'm on a non-alcoholic 2021 so far. There's actually a cocktail named after Arnold Palmer. It is a mixture of iced tea and lemonade. I don't know if you guys knew that.
But there must be booze in it, right?
No booze. It's non-alcoholic.
And Arnold Palmer is non-alcoholic. All these years, I didn't know that. No way.
Years of getting absolutely leathered in pubs to mocktails.
What's the point of that?
It's to serve people like me who are on dry 2020.
Right.
And I don't know if Arnold Palmer was a drinker, but it's definitely always been a non-alcoholic thing, Arnold Palmer.
Okay.
Now, maybe there are different versions where they lace it with vodka and you're grand and you can actually have their credibility restored in the nightclub. But
so tell me again, what's in it? Sorry, what?
3 quarts iced tea and a quart of lemonade. It's mainly iced tea and lemonade mix.
Right.
Yeah, you're back. I'm looking at a recipe here which has got 5 steps to it. I don't know how it got 5 steps because it's just lemonade and iced tea. That's what it is.
Okay. I mean, I just assumed there was some brown liquor in there somewhere to spice things up a bit.
Yeah, I'm sure you can add it, and it's like what they call it, a New York mule when you add red wine to a Moscow mule, and it does work actually. It looks a little bit like what you'd have in the dentist to drink, the stuff that you spit out, but I'm going off on a massive tangent here.
No, that's cool.
No, that sounds great.
Yeah. John, I missed yesterday. I hope you did a victory lap, 171 each way. What does that come out at? What kind of winnings would people have had?
I put 20 quid on, and I got 92 back. No, I got 72 back. Nice. So 52 profit off 20. I actually backed myself personally at 150, and he was leading Rafael Campos into the final round of the Puerto Rico Open. The one thing, obviously, with the virtual insanity is meant to be a bit of crack and for small money, and we shouldn't be gambling more than we can afford. But the thing you can do is you can trade these people. So Rafael Campos was down to 4-1 from 150s on Sunday. You could trade him on a betting exchange if you wanted to, if you were that in depth in it. So I tell you guys, and I've always believed this, and I have obviously focused since the start of the year when I pressed the reset button. Golf is where the money is. And I think the last few weeks have shown that our eye is in, and hopefully this week, fingers crossed, with the tips that are up on OTB AM and the app and on the site, that we'll get some joy. Matthew Fitzpatrick is the headline for the Arnold Palmer Invitational.
Very good. Is there any more sports news, or do you want to talk briefly about the Saturday panel? Because it sounds like you've got a doozy coming.
I'll just talk about the panel, and I'll just suppose ask the question out there, guys. We're going to do a panel on Northern football's dominance in the early 90s. It kind of came out of nowhere, really. There were little signs from certain counties that they could be competitive in league finals and that, but from 68 to 1991, Northern football didn't really have an imprint. Okay, you Tyrone in 86 and Mitten in 85, but then down You've Donegal, Derry and Down winning 4 years in a row. Like almost, those Ulster battles were like All-Ireland finals, especially the Down-Derry game in 1994, an incredible game of football. And as a Dubs fan, as a 15-year-old in 1994, I was so heartbroken by what had happened to Dublin against Meath in 91, Donegal 92, Derry 93 and Down 94. Who were these teams coming to Dublin and beating us? Like, I couldn't understand why they were beating us. I actually was so heartbroken that I had to just walk away from the Dubs for a while. It took me a long time to get so emotionally invested in the Dubs. Now, it did coincide with Clare, as a Clare hurling fan, making the breakthrough themselves. But is it okay, maybe it was the folly of youth, to walk away from a team if you're so heartbroken?
Yes.
We'll be speaking to...
Don't waste your life. Get off the bandwagon. Don't worry about it. There's loads of other teams out there. Go for it.
Yeah, Joe Brolly, James McCartan and Declan Bonner, all corner forwards, maybe corner forwards, will be on the panel this week, and we're looking forward to getting a sense of the then and the now with them.
Were they all All-Stars, I wonder, at that stage, at one stage?
No, Joe Brolly didn't win his All-Stars until the mid-90s.
Right.
James McCartan was man of the match in 91, scored a goal in 94. I don't know if Declan Bonner actually even won an All-Star. Now, obviously, he's managing Donegal, but it's interesting the journeys they had to get to where they did. And I can never understand, how did these teams come and just win in Dublin? And they were so battle-hardened, obviously.
Well, go on.
Well, sorry, this is going to be very interesting. I hate to put you on the spot here, but Joe Brolly has been famously quite critical of Declan Bonner in the past and of his football playing style with the Donegal under-21. So this is going to be good. This is like the Ulster the Ulster rivals going toe-to-toe on off the ball.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there'll be no metaphorical headlocks. He knows that Declan's on the panel, and look, if they start a scrap, obviously, I'll have to come in and be the adjudicator.
Let them at it.
I'll have to make sure this Queensborough rules apply to this northern invasion.
Hold everybody back. Hold everybody back. Let them. The peace process, obviously, the dividends. One of the things that has been spoken about. It'd be interesting to hear if that's all nonsense or if they actually legitimately think there's some kind of cause and effect as opposed to these things are happening simultaneously here, you know. And then obviously Tyrone got robbed in 1995. We all know that. There should at least have been a replay.
Dublin had to stumble over the line. It was like they really just fell
for the good of the game. For the good of the game, we needed Dublin to win in All Ireland.
We did, and look what it's given us now. Where everybody's fleeing the sport. But what I was interested in, because I read this book a few years ago, a really interesting book and a really grim book and a very sad book called Death in a Country Road by Des Fahy, about two Derry fans who went to Dublin in 1975 for the semi-final and were both shot dead on their way back. In a fake checkpoint by loyalist paramilitaries. And I always felt that the GA being a soft target and what the atmosphere, and I know Patrick Keelty's spoken about it before because he was on the minor panel for Down in 1987, what it was like back then. Like Joe Brolly's father was interned. What was it like back then, the experience of being a GA person, and was there a siege mentality around that? And did that give them, once they made the breakthrough in Ulster, a kind of a feeling of being battle hardened? Obviously, we see across McGlen how successful they were in the club game. Did that actually, in a way, give them a resilience that maybe other counties didn't have?
Good stuff, John. Looking forward to that. That's Saturday afternoon panel coming your way on Saturday afternoon. Funnily enough, John will be with you on Saturday from 1 o'clock all the way through until 5. It's 8:48 this morning on Thursday morning, the 4th of March. Had to think that one through. 9 o'clock, we've got racing with Tom Malone. We're going to talk The Wire with Sue Murphy, and there's football with Kevin Kilbane still to come on the show. But right now, it's time to talk basketball.
Okay, it is coming up to NBA All-Star weekend. It is more like NBA All-Star night this year. It is midway through the regular season, so it is a perfect time to check in on some of the major storylines when it comes to the basketball season so far. Delighted to welcome Hayley O'Shaughnessy to the show. She is co-host of the brand new Spinsters podcast, which is brought to you by Blue Wire Podcasts. Hayley, congratulations on episode 1, and I presume you can just check out the podcast in the usual places.
Thank you. Yes, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And we have a special second episode coming out Thursday. So 2 in 1 week for the first week.
Brilliant. Well, congratulations on that. And I did not expect to be starting an NBA chat talking about Zlatan Ibrahimovic. But yet, here we are. Let's talk about Zlatan Ibrahimovic. How surprised were you that this was the latest guy to come out and have a go at LeBron James and his politics?
You know, it's funny because my first thought when I saw his quote was actually about an NBA player who was not LeBron, Thomas Satoransky, who's a Czech player. He plays for the Bulls. And I was doing a feature on Thomas a couple of years ago, and we were talking about his favorite soccer players, and he mentioned Zlatan. And he said, yeah, he's my favorite, but of course he's my favorite, as if to say he's everybody's favorite. So it was funny because I thought, that's so funny because Zlatan picked everybody's favorite to go after with LeBron. Like, he's all of our favorites. It can't be ignored, the kind of politics that Zlatan is saying LeBron should be giving up. LeBron has very notably always been outspoken about civil rights and human rights. So that kind of has to be read into a little bit. But beyond that, I hate the idea of limiting one person to one thing, sports or otherwise. If I'm an excellent three-point shooter, I can't also be an excellent chef, or, you know, if I'm a writer, I can't be a podcaster. I hope that's not what he's telling me. That's what I'm attempting right now. So I always hate that argument. And I don't like any time that anybody says anything similar to stick to sports, which it does sound like after he doubled down again on his comments was what he was saying. What did you take from that? You know the soccer world quite a bit better than me. So is this typical?
Well, we've been talking about it a bit on the show, and it's just weird that Zlatan would say something like that because he is quite good at talking about other things himself. He's been really good at talking about racism. He's been really forthright, certainly over the course of the last 12 months, and comes from a place where he understands all those issues. So it's kind of surprising and a little bit weird from our perspective to see it come out. What I'm really interested in, though, actually, is because I got stuck in this Zlatan YouTube wormhole the other day, is the American view of him, because I'd completely forgotten about his appearance on Jimmy Kimmel, where he is a full-blown caricature of himself. He refers to himself in the third person multiple times. The crowd are whooping and hollering, and Zlatan is like, I've made it. Los Angeles loves me. This is Hollywood Zlatan. But I'm not sure if he's left that imprint on the United States afterwards.
My impression, at least from, I didn't get into soccer until much later. So I can't give you an authentic impression of, when I saw him as an international player. But as somebody in the U.S., extremely overconfident, almost to a degree where you're playing it up, like you said. And the third person thing always reminded me of Karl Malone. You absolutely never, under any circumstances, want to be compared to Karl Malone. So for that reason alone, he should probably cut that out. But yes, that is my impression, that he's just super overconfident. And when you are that way, sometimes you are saying things just to say them, just to get the publicity from it. So that kind of makes me wonder if this had anything to do with that. It's a very splashy thing, again, to go after somebody who is basketball's favorite.
Very true. Let us talk about some of the potential new basketball favorites then, because I do want to talk about some of the young stars in the NBA. Two in particular. We want to talk about LaMelo Ball, and we want to talk about Zion Williamson today. So let's start with Zion. Pelicans, they have exploded offensively, I think it's fair to say, since the end of January. Why is this?
Well, Zion's doing more ball handling himself this season, which has been really fun, because I think the instinct is to, with someone built so strongly like him and so solid, to just put the body in the paint, leave it there, feed him the ball. And that is where he does excel as well, but he can also be so much more than that. And that's why I really love what Stan Van Gundy's been doing, letting Zion take the ball down the court more. He's playing more of the role of ball handler in pick and rolls, which has been really fun. I always love when traditional big men can do that, because then you can switch up your entire offense. The more you can get to positionless basketball, the more opportunities you have. And with someone like Zion, who's already so excellent in the traditional power forward big role, getting him more into a ball handling role is also very exciting. So yeah, it's been very fun. There is also, of course, the downside with them, which has been the defense. The entire team's defense is a bit of a mess. His in particular I almost feel like sometimes when I watch him, he's just tired from all of the stuff he's been doing on the other end of the court. It looks like a little aloofness sometimes when he's, especially man-to-man. But yeah, that's my basic impression of that. However, because they're such a young team, I'll take offense over defense any day. Defense can come, but offense is much harder to come by naturally.
Is the tiredness coming from a place of the way he actually plays the game, that he's just such a powerful basketballer? He's a big guy. You don't want to come up against him, whether it's inside or outside the paint. And is that leading to just kind of a more attritional style almost of basketball, which is going to catch up with him eventually when it comes to minutes?
You know, I don't know. The big debate with Zion has been since the start, well, one of the many big debates, is that he's just out of shape. I'm not sure. There's also many other factors at play that have impacted everybody, and they're not Zion specific. For example, adjusting to life in the NBA is not a one-season thing. It's really difficult. There's a lot of travel. It's much different than college. You are required to learn how to compete against teams that are superb, not just college teams, not just some ACC teams, like when he was at Duke. And then there's also what's been happening this year. I'm tired. Aren't you tired? I mean, we're all tired. I can't imagine if you're a professional athlete and you're having to go out every night that you wouldn't be exhausted. So everything I've seen this season, I'm having a hard time judging it against, is this just something that's indicative of the larger thing that we are all going through? Or is this just maybe Zion Williamson is not in great shape? Or maybe, like you said, it's the way that he's playing on one end. He's giving so much, he doesn't have enough for the rest. So I'm not sure about that. But I don't think that any of us can make any conclusions this season because not a lot makes sense. You can't say anything very definitively.
Well, that's for sure. And when you say not a lot makes sense, we'll come to the New York Knicks in just a moment. LaMelo Ball is the other guy you want to chat about. The question about LaMelo Ball for me is this guy good enough to be more famous than his dad?
Oh, absolutely. And his brother. Good. Both brothers. Probably all combined. And I seriously hope that for all of the sons, but especially LaMelo, since he looks like he's having such a good time, that their introduction to the NBA is only part of the story, of a very long story with many successful chapters. It's hard. My parents are very supportive, and I played soccer, and, sometimes support, you just kind of want to tell them to just let you do your thing. And I can't imagine on a global scale what that feels like. I love watching LaMelo. It sounds like I can, we're zooming right now. I can see your face. I feel like it's probably the same for you. He is fantastic. He's such a concise playmaker. He has boundless energy. Usually it takes ball handlers and shooters longer to adjust in the NBA. Well, I shouldn't say that. It takes every type of specialist time to adjust in the NBA. If you're great at defense in college, that's wonderful. It's still going to take you some time, even though you have a natural head start. But LaMelo's three-point shooting has been excellent. And his defense is better than I expected. And he leads rookies in steals per game, which shocked me. Points, which did not shock me. Assists, which is not surprising again. And rebounds, which is just a good stat to lead in any time. It shows that you are absolutely making the most effort you can.
Those stats are incredible. He has been a starter for a month. I think, was it the 1st of February almost? He got his first start, or at least looked like a regular starter from that point. So we don't exactly have a huge window. However, in February, and these are some of the stats you've mentioned here, LaMelo averaged 20.1 points, 6.2 rebounds, and 6.7 assists. He's the third teenager to do this. The other two are Luka Doncic and LeBron James. Kendrick Perkins has called him a baby Magic Johnson. So no pressure, LaMelo, but as far as February 2021 goes, the guy had a pretty good one.
I love that you just said teenager, because I wish we could be more sympathetic with how young some of these players are coming in, especially when we're more critical of them. But instead, when we say rookie, you kind of already have the tendency to think of them of like, okay, professional NBA player, they must be much older. But it's true. They are so young, and he's doing all of this. He has so much ahead of him. So yes, it's very exciting. I never thought I'd be watching this much Hornets basketball, but here I am. They also have Terry Rozier, who I love. We went to the same school.
Oh, right. Okay. Was he known right then at that point that this guy was obviously going to go to the very top?
So I went to school at Louisville, which is in Kentucky, and we are not, or at least at that point, we're not a huge NBA school. We did not produce many NBA talents, but Terry was different from the start. And so we were always extremely hopeful for that. Gorgie Jang came before him, and then after him came Donovan Mitchell. So now we're kind of on to something. But yes, at the time, I definitely thought, okay, this guy's going to go to the league and be successful. And then he did. He had a lot of fun while he was with Boston. He went on that great 2017-18 playoff run when Kyrie Irving got hurt. So it's been very exciting watching him. And I love that he went to Charlotte. They gave him this huge payday. Everybody said he didn't deserve. I love when guys prove that they can actually earn what everybody else is telling them they are not supposed to be making. And so, yes, all in all, it's a very fun backcourt. We haven't even talked about Devontae Graham, who is very fun. He's been injured the last 3 or so weeks. When he gets back, forget about it. 3-man backcourt, all young guys. It's going to be extremely fun.
Let's stick with some Louisville greats. Let's talk about Donovan Mitchell. Let's talk about the Utah Jazz. they're obviously the best team in the NBA right now. But the question is, how real are their credentials when it comes to playoffs, when it comes to championships? What do you reckon?
It's hard to ever say how will this translate if you don't have somebody on the team who has translated it before. But as far as their regular season credentials, they are solid in so many aspects, and they really have something for everyone who'd want to doubt them. If you're an old school fan and you're like, well, defense is most important, look no further than Rudy Gobert, who can be the traditional big in defense, and he can also defend smaller positions. If you're saying, well, it's modern basketball, you have to play with... It's modern basketball, you have to be shooting a lot of threes. They are shooting a lot of threes. And they're also making a lot of threes. So if you're an analytics person, don't worry. They're also efficient. And if you're somebody who's like me, who tends to be more like, I test, I like to rely on what I see and then supplement it later with analytics and stats, look no further than Donovan Mitchell and Mike Conley, who are leading one of the most exciting offenses every night. I genuinely think that they are set up very, very well to do well in the playoffs. However, I don't know. If you gave me a team that was not built this thoroughly and it had somebody who's been through many playoff runs before, I'd always take the person who's been through many playoff runs before. It's not to say it doesn't happen where the less experienced team makes it through. It's just that it's such a huge learning curve. Last year, we did see the Jazz. That was a really fun playoffs for them. They were presented with a ton of challenges with the Nuggets. And I hope that they can just keep pushing through with that. The good news is they're built on a very solid foundation here.
Yeah, they certainly are. Zion getting a bit of a wake-up call the other night. Is that the sort of thing you want to see them get throughout the regular season, where if you're a Jazz fan, you're like, I don't mind seeing my team get ripped apart in certain moments because at least it gives them the opportunity to fix them before the playoffs?
Yeah, absolutely. You already have the best record. They can afford to lose a couple games and still have it. So absolutely, especially if it's a versatile team, if it's a non-traditional team, if it's a team you might be seeing, or if it just has an aspect you might be seeing, okay, we're going to go against a big who's also, an excellent playmaker. Well, I wish you would have had more preparation with that last year against the Nuggets. So yes, all kinds of challenges. It's better to be thrown them now.
Wanted to get your take on the Brooklyn Nets. So their defense seems to have got a little bit better. It couldn't have got any worse, quite frankly. Who is this down to? Who are you giving the credit to? I know it hasn't been an amazing week. That game against San Antonio Spurs, I only caught highlights of it afterwards, was absolutely insane the way that ended. Like that, if you're trying to push good PR for the Brooklyn Nets and their mentality this season, that is not the sort of thing you want to be putting out there. So where are they at, especially when it comes to their defense?
It's tough because anytime you go against the Spurs, it's always more about the Spurs than it is about you. The Spurs breaking that playoff streak that they had broke my heart because I don't support many American institutions, but I will support the San Antonio Spurs. They have been around and been successful and have had the same, aura? What's the word I'm trying to say? They've had the same image for their team because Popovich leads it and he produces the same types of players for as long as I can remember. So that night, I don't remember exactly how long the streak was, but it was something like the Nets hadn't won in San Antonio in X amount of years. It was something ridiculous because that's how all San Antonio streaks are. For 15 years, this hasn't happened, and it's always something random. Going against the Spurs is always more about the Spurs carrying on their legacy than it is about you. That being said, I don't feel any better about the Brooklyn Nets defense. I think defense is the kind of thing where you have to see it improve for at least a month to think it's really substantial and not just a result of the teams you're playing, the nights you're having. However, my advice to people who are maybe not huge basketball fans is this. If you are even mildly curious about the NBA, watch the Brooklyn Nets. You have three guys in Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden who could all run the offense on the team on their own. And the disclaimer here, of course, is that KD has been out with a hamstring injury for almost a month, but he's coming back hopefully shortly after All-Star. KD might be the greatest scorer in history. James Harden is absolutely up there in the argument for three-point shooters. Kyrie then is also this fantastical ballet dancer, ball handler who just can take over a game by himself, and the other two could watch him go. The defense is horrific. Like you said, it's not as bad now. Will it not return to that? I'm not sure. Players will get tired this season. Again, I have no idea what's going to happen. This is such an unusual season. The schedule's been erratic. I don't know that it will get better, but if you are not a huge basketball fan, you will get a sudden introduction to modern NBA because defense has never been less important, unfortunately. But yes, with the offense, you feel like you're getting strapped into a jet plane, and it's very fun. I love watching the Brooklyn Nets. I think they're very weird. I do love the super team era because I like imagining what we usually do with All-Star, which is like, oh, can you imagine if Kawhi and LeBron James played together? Let's do it for All-Star. But then it never ends up being really that competitive. Last year was an exception. I don't think this year anybody's very enthused about. Super teams are that happening for us. We get to see our favorite players playing together. So I love the Brooklyn Nets.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
So that's a portion of the chat between Haley O'Shaughnessy and Eoin there. Looking forward to the NBA All-Star Weekend. The full thing is available over at youtube.com/off the ball. There's another 10 minutes of goodness for your delectation there. It is 6 minutes past 9. You're watching OTB AM. Sue Murphy joins us next for our OTB TV Picks of the Week.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Off the ball.
He has a shot and he finds the net. Scott McTominay has put the seal on the Manchester derby this afternoon. Scott McTominay makes it Manchester United 2, Manchester City 0.
The Manchester derby takes centre stage and Off the Ball this Sunday. Kenny Cunningham joins Nathan Murphy on commentary for the Etihad Showdown. Before that, we'll bring you Liverpool's clash with Fulham. It's Brian Kerr with Stephen Doyle calling the action at Anfield. We'll have the paper review too as Dan McDonnell and Ryan Nugent look through the back pages with Joe. That's all to come on this Sunday's Off the Ball.
Off the Ball. Don't miss a moment of the action every weekend from 1 p.m. on OTB Sports Radio. Listen live on the OTB Sports app.
Sean, what's that thing going round the garden?
That is our new Husqvarna Automower.
Automower?
Yeah, it's a robotic lawnmower from Husqvarna. Cuts the grass automatically, has GPS tracking and an app. Even works in the rain. I just thought, why spend time cutting grass when I could spend it with the family?
Great! You can put the dinner on, so...
No can do, love. Have to paint the man cave.
Husqvarna Automower. Never mow again. Learn more at husqvarna.ie.
Tom Watson, you're welcome to Golf Weekly.
Hey, this is going to be fun. Very happy to say European captain and, of course, three-time major winner Padraig Harrington joins us.
Today's special guest on Golf Weekly is Lee Westwood.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I'm honoured and delighted.
Let's bring in Paul McGinley, who joins us now. Paul, you're very welcome.
Shane Lowry, how are you keeping?
I'm good, thanks, yeah. Well, I'm as good as I can be.
The biggest names in golf and Ireland's best golf podcast, Golf Weekly, now exclusively available on Patreon. Go to otbsports.com/Golf Weekly to sign up now.
Get ready for the Cheltenham Festival with the Boyle Sports app, with a special offer guaranteed on every race, every day of the festival, plus extra places on each-way bets over all 4 days. The Boyle Sports app has got you covered. Need to study up? Check out our Racing Post insights or watch our exclusive video previews with Cheltenham Gold Cup winning jockey Robbie Power. The Cheltenham Festival on the faster-than-ever Boyle Sports app. Boyle Sports. This is betting. Gamble responsibly. See gamblingcare.ie. 18+.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Bang on 8 minutes past 9 here this morning on OTB AM. I'm delighted to say Sue Murphy is with us to talk TV and movies and anything that you might have missed. Sue, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning. How are you?
Very well. What's going on?
I think the big release this week is Moxie, which is the new Amy Poehler film. It's out on Netflix actually yesterday. I saw it last week and absolutely loved it. I kind of felt like, you know, there's Mean Girls, you have Easy A, those kind of teenage kind of films. It's very like that, and it's like the newest addition to that series. Amy Poehler actually directs it. She plays a single mother in it, and her daughter, Vivian, decides that she's going to release a zine around the school because she's basically had enough of the way that some of the guys treat the girls in school. And it's great. Like, I think it's one of those things that, you know, if you're a teacher and you have a class full of teenage girls, show it to them, because the way the guys talk to the girls in this film, like, it's kind of, one of them passes it off and says, he's just annoying. And the one goes, no, he's not annoying. Like, that's more than annoying. He's harassing me. And there's a couple of times where one of the teacher goes, oh, is this bothering or is it harassing me? Because if it's harassing, I have to open a whole load of other documents. And you're just like, why are they ignoring when these girls are speaking up? So, and it basically just starts this revolutionary movement in the school, and the girls have just had enough. And it's very enjoyable. Now, the end was a bit kind of, a bit too sweet, nicey nice, but the rest of it was just like, the amount of times when you're a young teenage girl, when you want to say, no, that's not acceptable, and you just don't, because you want to kind of roll with it a little bit. I've been through that. I'm sure every woman in the world has been through it. And it's just a great thing to show to kids. I think it's brilliant. Really, really good.
Is it funny?
It is funny in parts. Now, I will say, if you're watching it as an adult, it's not as good as if you're watching it for, like, as a young adult film, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, so that's it. That's the target market is the teenager as opposed to... Okay, and so...
Absolutely.
Is it the type of thing that parents will watch with their kids and kind of ask questions about, are you experiencing this?
That's what I really hope happens, because... There's this guy in the school, and basically he likes one of the girls, and the girls doesn't like him, and he decides that the way to act around this is to harass her, and he harasses her constantly.
Which is essentially, sorry to interrupt, given what you're saying, which is essentially the thematic of every 1980s teen comedy. It was, I can't get that girl, I'm going to hire somebody to get that girl for me, and then bait and switch, which was the theme of Roxanne, and what's the one with was it Pretty in Pink?
Pretty in Pink, yeah.
But Pretty in Pink didn't Molly Ringwald write an amazing piece in the New Yorker years later going, that was so creepy. That was like one of the creepiest things that I've ever been involved in. I can't watch that movie with my daughter. So this is kind of trying to counteract...
Correct some of that.
Decades and decades. The problem is it has to be good, because sometimes these movies have great messages, but ultimately they never have long-term resonance because they don't hold together as the piece of art that they're supposed to be.
Yeah, no, it's not that. You root for her. Like, you really want her to succeed, and I think that's what the characters are actually really likable. And you know what? It's nice to see teenagers often when you watch a film with teenagers, they're grouped into all their little groups, and they have, you know, the quarterback or the cheerleaders or any of that kind of stuff. And that kind of comes into play. But this scene just gets rid of all of those hierarchies in terms of groups in schools. And it just puts them all on the same level. And I just thought it was like the first time in a long time I've seen something like that where I've gone, oh yeah, that's a bit different than stuff I've seen before. And you can feel Amy Poehler, I don't know if she has a teenage daughter herself, but you can really feel that it's coming from her point of view of, do you know what, we've had enough of that.
Okay, so you recommend, it's called Moxie, it's out this weekend.
Yeah, it's out. It was out yesterday on Netflix. It's out already.
Okay, so everybody can have a look on Netflix this weekend. Coming to America 2. Coming to America,
yeah. I'm not allowed to say much about this because it's out tomorrow. And this is one of the strictest embargoes I've ever seen around a film. So I'm just going to say that it's out on Amazon Prime. There are literally no reviews of this absolutely anywhere at the moment. Like, it's been kept under lock and key. But I went back and watched some of the original one because I've never seen the original. That's awful. But the 1988 film, and I'm like, I don't know, maybe it's just I'm not the target audience, but I didn't think it was funny. So I don't know if some people are going to get on and kill me because I know it's a classic, and whenever I say something like that, somebody's like, no, it's the greatest thing ever. But anyway,
are there Coming to America stans who really stand the movie, or are there Coming to America stans who have a few lines from it and think like, oh, this is, you know?
I think they're Eddie Murphy people. I think that there's like an era of Eddie Murphy where he just couldn't do any wrong, and like there is a lot of likable things about that character actually, and it's kind of like I kind of went a couple of times, but I just like I love Raw. I think Raw is one of the best things I've ever seen, and I think he's so funny. But again, when you're like, I watched this back to back almost with Moxie, and the way they talk about and treat about women when you come off the back of something like Moxie is
you know. It's really not acceptable. Like,
no.
The most famous scene in it is completely and utterly unacceptable. It's like, it's, you know, criminal. It's a criminal, ha 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 ha. Oh, which like in the 80s everybody would laugh at, but now you realise it's a crime.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know if I'm from that school of like going back and correcting what's already been out and editing out stuff. I think that they should exist just the way they were. But at the same time, when you watch this back, you're just like, ooh, God. And it just watching it through the lens, especially coming back off the back of a film like a feminist film like Moxie, you're just like, wow, that's really not great.
No, I mean, even if you hadn't just watched Moxie before it, I think that... have you seen this one? Do you know what we're talking about?
I'm not going to lie. I was looking at Coming to America there, and I drifted off. What is the particular cultural reference that we're talking? Because what came to mind when you mentioned this theme of 80s movies is Breakfast Club, and how unbelievably creepy that is. And that does, again, you do not need to see something like Moxie for you to actually appreciate how creepy that is. Like that is the best way you can describe Breakfast Club. As much as it does a lot of things right, I mean, what it does wrong is just absolutely awful. But sorry, go on.
I find that when you look back at those films now, like I know when I saw those films first, you never even thought about it. And it's mad that in the current lens, when you're looking back, you're like, wow, these are really, like, we should really be talking about how these films are really not acceptable anymore. And I don't really see, like, I know you were talking about the Pretty in Pink one, but people still go, oh, they're classics. And you're like,
I haven't seen Breakfast Club in a long time. What's the problem with Breakfast Club?
Oh God, the kind of anti-hero in it, the guy with the long hair, I can't remember his name, is basically spends the entire movie harassing the female lead to the point where there is a peeping Thom moment, essentially, in the middle of a detention.
And she's quite quiet and kind of dismissive of him, and it's a bit like, please stop.
It's that, like, I mean, like it I can remember the first time I only watched it for the first time a couple of years ago actually, and it's kind of like, what was the 80s doing? What, like, when was there a time when people watched this and were like, thumbs up to this movie because it's hip and indie and the soundtrack is great, we're now going to not talk about this thing in the middle. Like, I can see why people love the film and why it's got such a cult following, but it pretty much, a lot of that gets erased when you see that particular moment in the middle. It's like, what the hell was that? That's
a whole genre in the 80s. That whole kind of creepy young boys creeping on women is like literally a whole... Like every summer there would have been 2 or 3 movies in that came out that, or like, I suppose this is just what America is like.
Even there's a slight tint to it in Ferris Bueller. Like, it's only a very slight nudging towards it. I think that's probably why it stands the test of time more than others, because it's not flagrantly creepy as the others, because there is an actual the male lead has a girlfriend, and there's no sort of, oh, we're going to chase the female lead in this one because that's what happens in 80s movies. But there is that moment when Cameron pretends to be dead, essentially, pretends to stare at a wall, and the female lead is like, did you see me changing there? And Cameron is like, ha 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 ha, and they both have a laugh at it, and it's like, is Cameron a complete creep? Like, what? Like, is this what we've been dealing with the entire thing?
I think that was implied in his character the whole way through, though, right? I mean,
yeah, well, like, I guess so. But like, I mean, I just had him down as a bit odd. Like, I don't know. The 80s, weird time. I don't envy you.
Coming to America is like the story of a rich African prince who comes to America, and
to find a bride that has a mind of her own, but he can't actually lift a finger to help himself. So.
Yeah. And look, there are definitely bits that were like, believe it or not, right? When we were in 6th class, this was the movie that they showed at Christmas. They brought the TV.
Christmas.
They brought the TV in, and teacher stood. I sat at his desk reading the paper. I went in and had a chat with somebody else, and we watched Coming to America as pubescent 12-year-olds. in South Kildare.
Oh my God!
And if you know, there's a few scenes in the movie where, like, in retrospect, what the fuck were they thinking?
I mean,
pardon my French. I apologise for any offence that may have been caused.
The start is just like, oh my God, no! It's just so unacceptable. No.
Well, I mean, do you want to tell Eoin what that is?
Like, I'm on the outside looking in at this. I haven't seen Coming to America.
Maybe we shouldn't.
I'm happy to not know anything about it.
Yeah, like, I don't know. I feel like I feel like you come along with something like a second film in this, you have a blind spot, a blind cultural spot to come to America because everyone talks about how great Eddie Murphy is in this and Beverly Hills Cop. So you have to kind of go back and go, okay, well, I'll go and watch these. But is Eddie Murphy a little bit misogynistic in these films? I would say, yeah. And like the scene in particular at the start, Eoin, is that he has all these people who basically do everything for him, and he's in a massive bath. And there's all these women washing him. And it's just like, I don't know if we want to say this early in the morning, but she gets up and she goes, the royal penis is now cleaned. And you're just like, okay, right?
Wow. Happy Christmas, everybody in that school that you're
I can't believe that.
Wow. What a Christmas movie that is. It's, okay, I see. And we're just going to get a modern version of that.
No one ever forgot it. I can tell you that. So you got to dig that out, Eoin, in preparation for watching the second one, which no one has seen, and no pre-release for it, which is always
no reviews.
Which you're always a little bit dubious about. You mentioned Amy Poehler, Parks and Recreation. You're rewatching that at the moment. It seems it's on somewhere at the moment.
Yeah, it's on Prime, and I think it goes on to Netflix intermittently. I think it might be on Netflix at the moment. But I've rewatched it twice, and I finished it again about a month ago, and I just love it. And this is what I find weird about it, because it is very US Office. Like, it's the talking to the camera documentary, somebody following her around. She works in Pawnee in the Parks and Recreation department. And I really, rewatching it the second time, realised how brilliant the characters are by the time they get to season 2, and how much they bed in and they all get used to each other and their own little jokes. And I'm pretty sure there's a lot of improvising in some of that script and they just go with it. But I just love Nick Offerman as Ron Swanson. He is one of my favourite characters, and he just hates working for the government, loves meat, likes to have it going, hates his ex-wife, and he's just a very entertaining person. But I just love this series. I think the 5 seasons, it doesn't lag at any point, and I think it ends brilliantly as well, which is hard to do with a series like that.
Okay, it strikes me like you don't watch that much back.
No, I don't. No, I'm not one of those people that rewatches stuff. Just because there's so much new stuff to watch all the time, that it actually has to be like that and Schitt's Creek are the only 2 comedy series, besides Friends being on the loop on the TV all the time, that I would go back and rewatch. And maybe Father's Head. Like, even The Wire. So I started The Wire again last night because I know you guys are watching it. But that's the first time I've rewatched The Wire since 2008, maybe. So I just don't. There's so much new stuff that's brilliant that you'd never get to, you know?
Okay, we were going to talk about The Wire, but we actually don't have time. So you're recommending for something that if anybody's missed Parks and Recreation, it stands the test of time. It's worth going back to.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
If you want to be culturally appalled, go back and watch Coming to America this weekend in advance of probably not watching Coming to America with the 2-2. See what they did there? They changed the TO to the letter, to the number 2.
Very clever.
They're like the mirror. They can show you the zebra and tell you it's a zebra at the same time. I mean, it's an amazing piece of, it's a cultural artifact. I might frame that back page today. Sue, good stuff. Thanks very much.
No worries at all.
Sue with us every Thursday morning. Talk to us about what the hell's going on in the world of TV, and joins us for recommendations. And I think the recommendation this week is Parks and Recreation. Right, the best golf podcast on the planet is on the. All I can hear is you sniggering in the background there, Eoin. It's been a fairly constant. You're like Muttley.
Golf podcast.
Well, Dad Bod's a go-go. From March the 11th, Golf Weekly is moving to Patreon. If you sign up, you'll get a guaranteed podcast every Thursday and extra episodes around the biggest tournaments of the year. There'll be interviews with golf's biggest names as well. You'll also get the chance to become an official friend of the pod. You'll be able to chat to the lads, Joe, Nathan, Peter and Fionn. You'll get invites to our golf days and enjoy exclusive watch parties around the majors. Get on to otbsports.com/Golf Weekly and sign up now for $3.99 per month, or just search Golf Weekly on patreon.com. The page is live now, and the friends of the pod are thronging in, and they're chatting away whenever the golf tournaments are on as well. So that's the crack with that. Get on it, #friend of the pod. Now, 24 minutes past 9 this morning, we should turn our attention to racing. We're going to speak with Thom Malone in just a moment. It's obviously been a cataclysmic week for racing, but we're still just 2 weeks out from Cheltenham. So in the background, the Cheltenham preparation is continuing, and that's what we're going to talk about in terms of those. But also, we're going to talk about the impact on racing generally of the fallout from the Gordon Elliott situation. Thom, good morning to you. How are you?
Hey, Ger, how's it going?
It has been a cataclysmic week for the reputation of racing. How is racing dealing with this? Because it seems like the backlash to the backlash kind of got underway yesterday. Ted Walsh came out and said, come on, everybody, let's not kill this man here. He's in a bad way. There's a really excellent piece from Keith Donoghue talking about his own struggles in life and how Gordon Elliott helped him in the Racing Post today. Is any of this carrying over, do you feel, into the mainstream, where the mainstream has started to kind of, cool their jets a little bit?
I think so, and I think there is a slight English-Irish divide on that cooling of the jets as well. Joe captured it nicely yesterday on Twitter as well. I think everyone does need to calm down a little bit and let the process go through. Now, in saying that, let's not let Gordon Elliott completely off the hook, but we also need to accept that due process needs to happen here. A punishment needs to be meted out, and it needs to be fair. And at the start, like you said, when we spoke on Monday morning, Ger, this situation was still on the way up in the sense of the explosion. I think finally we might be just on the way down in the court of public anger. But racing does seem to be now rallying around Gordon Elliott a little bit, and I think racing probably needs to be a little bit careful in how much support they give him and what way they support him. He needs support from his doesn't deserve his career to be destroyed, but he also needs to get an appropriate punishment. And like the pressure the IHRB must feel at the moment, because like we said on Monday as well, Ger, there is no precedent for this in racing. And I'm kind of struggling to think of any sport where there's sort of precedent for this situation. But racing are very much rallying around their man at the moment, and there's certainly a concern about Gordon Elliott's well-being as well. And you would hope that he is able to recover from this, and it is going to destroy him, as he said in his piece in the Racing Post. And this image will unfortunately define him for a very, very, very long time. But we're kind of now in a situation where we really need to see what happens with the process, because, as we mentioned on Monday, it's an enormous organisation that still needs to keep going. Some owners are saying they're sticking by him. Those owners are going to want to have runners at Cheltenham. The BHA have said they want those horses to be at Cheltenham. So how this all plays out, and again, very quickly in the next couple of days, is going to be intriguing.
Yeah, I think that's the main kind of political intrigue that has to happen. The BHA banned him from having any runners while the investigation was ongoing. And then their head of equine safety is in the papers today saying, well, we don't mean that they can't run at Cheltenham. I mean, obviously, they're going to be able to run at Cheltenham. So it's kind of like we were seen to act. We acted really quickly. But actually, what we did now, we're not really sure if we're allowed to do that. On what basis were we doing that? And also, what if, say, for example, an owner who was of a mind was to take the BHA to court and say, you're preventing me from, on what basis? Where's your own rules that would prevent me from running my horses at Cheltenham or Aintree, for example?
Yeah, and I mean, the BHA in this case, as Lydia Hislop said on Tuesday evening's show on Off the Ball, the BHA, the only power they have within their jurisdiction is to decline entries, because Gordon Elliott is licensed in Ireland. So he is licensed to the IHRB, the old turf club, as we said. So the BHA are using the only power they have in declining his entries, and now they're kind of having to roll back in a little bit. But, from what I understand, pressure came on the IHRB, or pressure came on the BHA rather, to make a decision. And it is very much seen as, Gordon Elliott and this image is persona non grata now at Cheltenham and Aintree. And like we mentioned on Monday, these 4 to 6 weeks for racing, they're just so aware of their public image, and they were acting in maintaining and hoping to, maintain that public image in some way. But maybe now they're kind of like, oh, no, we're actually denying people, and I don't mean Gordon Elliott, but I do mean Gordon Elliott's stable staff. I do mean Gordon Elliott's owners who've paid an enormous amount of money and, set up for basically 2-3 years to get horses to arrive in this situation. And now they're kind of looking 2 weeks out from Cheltenham, and you have the situation where either you move your horse to another yard, which, they don't want to, many of them won't want to do because they don't want to seem to abandon a man in his hour of need, which is an understandable position as well. So, the owners have been put in a very, very difficult position by the posturing of the BHA, essentially acting outside their own remit.
Thomas, it seems that there are two things at play if you're an owner here. First of all, as you mentioned, there is the image question. Does it look bad if my horses are associated with Gordon Elliott? But second of all, there's probably naturally a real element of concern about your horses after you see the image initially. So does more need to be done from Gordon Elliott's side to put forward the fact that he does look after horses well, like rather than just the PR side, an actual proof to the owners and to the people involved that actually this was an outlier? The problem here is that we're in COVID, so you can't, normally in this situation, what you do is just invite everyone into your yard, and then you'd be like, well, just open your eyes and look around. I mean, an example I can think of off the top of my head would be Stamcrow, who obviously is a difficult enough horse to train, and as he had mentioned in a Cheltenham preview a couple of weeks ago, he went and built Stamcrow his own basically stable with a garden so he could live this kind of existence. So it was more like a wild horse essentially, where he had shelter in one corner, but he had essentially a big back garden in his stable. I mean, those kind of actions are not someone that doesn't care for their animals. And again, it's kind of difficult for him to communicate it, just given the situation at the moment, because obviously, he's under investigation for this horrific image. But it's very difficult to kind of allay people's fears who have their doubts anyway. The problem is the people who probably think the worst of my guests here maybe had an impression of horse racing anyway, and that's now been cemented. So it's very difficult to change their minds. And then there are just concerns for ordinary lay people. And how do you get a message across when essentially you can't really invite people into the yard to let them see? Any of the press, their caveat when talking about Gordon Elliott during the week, myself included, is like, anytime you go up there, you're kind of blown away by the place. It's one of the most incredible training facilities I've ever seen. It's newly built. He bought a cattle farm a few years ago and he turned it into a training facility, an incredible training facility, huge and successful one, from a greenfield site. So the notion that horses up there are not well cared for, and that's the other thing, as Lydia Hislop said, horses are not well cared for, don't win. So you can't be in a situation where you're basically having more winners than almost anyone else in Britain and Ireland over the course of 4, 5, 6 year period, when your horses are not being cared for well.
That's interesting, Tom, because there was definitely, and Dan McDonald brings it up today in the Irish Independent, and it was an issue on Liveline during the week as well. And it was the phraseology that was used in the Irish Times earlier too, about him being an outsider in racing. And so it felt as if there was people within racing who were also happier to put the boot in earlier in the week. And that whole conversation about the culture and all that kind of stuff, I think the point you make there, if that's what people believe, if that's what you, as somebody who has been involved in racing your whole life, believes, that horses who are badly treated won't win over a sustained period of time, you might get a trick out of a horse by treating one of them badly, but all of your horses wouldn't be winning as much as Gordon Elliott's had done if they weren't cared for, and there'd be some signs of it, and there would have been rumours of this stuff before. But as far as I'm aware, there's none of that. There's none of that in the background here. There's no sense of ill treatment at all. Was some of the viciousness because he wasn't part of racing royalty, because he was a self-made man, because, let's face it, he's not a great communicator and he doesn't play to the crowd?
I mean, there have been many axes ground in the last couple of days. I don't think there can be any doubt about that. There was one particular piece from America. It was, the headline was just ban him, and then it turned into this personal tirade just because Gordon wasn't particularly communicative in an interview with them. And there is that element of that he, sometimes he doesn't really play the media game, and that definitely an element of that is some shyness. Now, again, I don't want to be seen as defending Gordon Elliott, because obviously, what happened in this image is awful, but he is undoubtedly an outsider. There is no doubt about that. He, you look at any other of the major trainers in Ireland, flat or national hunt, and the vast majority of them have come from a racing lineage. Their fathers, their grandfathers, their surnames are synonymous with the game in training and riding. Gordon Elliott is not that. He learned from Martin Pipe. He went over to Martin Pipe as a young man, and Martin Pipe, another outsider essentially of the game, who completely changed things in the UK and, for the better. But he, again, another outsider, and that's who Gordon Elliott learned from. And there is definitely a feeling of axe has been ground, and there is definitely a feeling that Gordon Elliott is a little bit of an outsider. But now I think we're at the stage where, again, we just kind of want to see where this disciplinary process goes, because kind of too many people are being left in the lurch now. While this sort of rage was burning over the last 2 days.
Yeah, that rage seems to have passed. So Cheveley Park took their horses, and you can completely understand their logic. You can also understand Gigginstown. They were out first, and they said, "Look, that we're going to keep ours." So it's the ones who come after, which is why Philip Reynolds is important, and then a few more over the next, particularly of horses who are going to be competitive over the next month, essentially. That'll have a big bearing on whether or not those horses are allowed to run, how they're allowed to run. The suggestion yesterday was that from Ted Walsh that he hand over voluntarily his licence for a period of time. Would that allow somebody else to train in those facilities? So there's two assistant trainers who've been linked with the gig, who already work there and who would know the horses. And as Keith Donoghue pointed out, these horses have routines. NYLN is particularly finicky, and they put special boots on them. I had no idea about any of that kind of stuff. But, Henry de Bromhead will have to learn that really quickly, and it sounds like they're in communication, and that's all fine. But if you're an owner, you want your horse to have the best chance of winning in Cheltenham, and therefore also in Aintree. So what fudges do you see possible here that will allow everybody to feel like some form of justice is served, the man is not crucified, and he's taught a lesson? And none of the owners and the staff get punished for this action?
What I genuinely thought would happen, or maybe is happening already, is that Gordon Elliott would kind of approach the IHRB with a solution. I would say that, the problem with the two assistants is that they don't have a license. They're not, so you need to. So there would be people around who would have been qualified trainers. Maybe they would have lapsed or whatever. So there is a kind of an element of bureaucracy that needs. So they would kind of need someone who is a trainer to come in and take over. I mean, a precedent for this would be in the UK, where Mahmoud Al-Zaruni, now he was an employee trainer for Godolphin. He was banned, and then they brought in Charlie Appleby essentially as a replacement. So there is an element of precedent. So all the horses didn't need to be moved, but it is a slightly different situation in that Gordon Elliott literally owns the yard. It's his yard. So I would say they will try and keep the team in place as much as possible, try and bring in a person, and then Gordon would maybe, volunteer to maybe kind of self-exclude essentially from racing. He won't be at the races. He won't be involved in the day-to-day training, but essentially he lives there. So I don't know how
he literally lives right in the middle of it. Like we were down there 4 years ago, and to the day actually ahead of a Cheltenham preview. Yeah. The house is right there. Like it's literally in the same kind of outcrop. So it's a complicated scenario, and I don't wish the people dealing with it any further difficulties, because it's obviously quite tangled. But at the same time, like taking someone's livelihood away for a sustained period of time is essentially not in keeping with the nature of the offence. It's not fair.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, again, you have to consider that the crime is in no way related to his achievements. So, like, it's not like he doped the horse, and because of that doping, he achieved success. So the two are kind of two completely separate, unrelated elements, essentially. You know what I mean? Like, normally you'd have, say, someone, they profited from a stroke, and that's how they brought disrepute, or they landed a gamble, or they stopped a horse. There is no kind of relationship to an incident on the race course which led to Gordon Elliott's success or another person not winning a race out of this. So that's a key part of the decision-making process as well. It was an horrific incident and an incredibly stupid thing to do. And again, something that has been, added to the situation by how badly it was dealt with subsequently, even before the image was brought out. So they have to find a punishment for that without, like you say, undoing the career that he has built, like I said, for himself, by himself.
Yeah.
As one of racing's very few self-made men.
Yeah, okay, it's a tricky situation, but I think the lawyers will get involved certainly, and I wouldn't be terribly surprised if some kind of solution is found that in a couple of months' time we can all be talking about something else. Right, Thom, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. We didn't get to talk about Cheltenham, but we'll do that properly next week.
we will. Thanks, Chair.
There was plenty else to talk about. OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Tomorrow we'll hear from Caoimhe O'Neill, Alan Quinlan, and there is, of course, the football show. Right now we're bringing you Kevin Kilbane live from Canada and back with Joe on Off the Ball.
Now you're very welcome along to the football show. Very happy to welcome back a familiar voice and face if you're watching. Kevin Kilbane, hello.
Hi, Joe. How you doing?
I'm very well, my man. There's a...
My headphone's just fallen out here as well, because I said that. So that's the excitement that you bring, Joe,
Steady, just take a breath, take a breath. There's a Kevin Kilbane on that screen, there's a Kevin Kilbane over my shoulder.
I know, it does feel a bit surreal actually seeing that fella above your shoulder there, yeah. Yeah. I'd rather be the fella above your right shoulder, that's what it would be, yeah.
Johnny Sexton, well indeed.
Yeah.
So listen, briefly, we should say I haven't been speaking to you, certainly not on air. Congratulations. Little one around the house.
Thank you, yeah. A month old today, yeah. So yeah, it's been good. It's been great, yeah. It's yeah, but it brings back the old memories, doesn't it? But it's great. It is great. She's doing well. She's doing fantastically well, actually. So yeah, no real dramas. Night feeds, staying up overnight, and things like that. The usual stuff that everyone's been through. But it's good fun. She's great. Yeah, she's a little stunner. Yeah.
Great. Listen, congrats. Must be just lovely time, and you're changing nappies. You're stepping up to the plate, I hope.
If any man in this day and age is not changing nappies, there's a big problem, isn't there? Let's be honest. Come on. I can imagine you. I'm waiting for the day, Joe, when you tell me. I'm waiting for this day, and then I'll see you with the father. Now, this is the one thing that I want to see. But anyway, yes, of course, Joe. Of course, yeah, definitely.
Good man. Good man. So, I don't know when we last talked on air. It's been a while. A lot going on in the world of football. We can safely say Man City are going to win the league. 21 wins in a row.
Oh, yeah.
For the first kind of 5, 6, 7 games of this 21 in a row stretch, it's not like they were tearing it up. There were like a 1-0 wins or 2-0 wins. They weren't necessarily catching the eye. And at that stage, it was all about Man United, who were top of the table, and City had all these games in hand. But they've just kept going and going and going. And now suddenly here they are looking almost invincible.
Yeah, but judging them from maybe last season, certainly pre-COVID last year, up to Christmas during last season, the form wasn't too dissimilar. I'd agree with that. Watching a lot of the games, they weren't pulling up trees, but I think they were able to grind results out in a way that they weren't necessarily able to do. Defensive structure to the side. John Stones coming back from absolutely nowhere, because he was being touted with a move to Arsenal, even West Ham. I think in recent seasons I've seen, in the last year or so, his form has improved dramatically. They look stable defensively, and obviously they've got a top class goalkeeper. But yeah, I don't think they were playing the real great football that we'd seen from them. They've obviously got the class with De Bruyne and a little bit of magic here and there from Sterling and Mahrez. But I don't think the form was that much more improved than it was maybe last season up to Christmas. And then all of a sudden, off the back of getting those 1-0 wins, as you say, and grinding out those results, the form started to come, and a lot of the players, Gundogan really came into his own through that. And I think, he absolutely is his best form since he's come to the Premier League, because I still had my uncertainties around Gundogan while watching him over the last few seasons. But I think he's playing more advanced. I think he's got a bit more freedom to get forward and be that second striker at times. So I think it's probably suited in getting into advanced positions. But definitely in the last month, 6 weeks, if you're watching the games, which I've seen 3 of the games in the last month, and they are playing great football again. They're playing an expansive type of football that we expect from Guardiola and his side, but also in the final third, they've been devastating. I think they're a little bit more direct as well, actually, from watching City in recent seasons, which I think, Liverpool probably changed the mould over the last couple of seasons with how they started to play, with having that real pacing behind. They started to go a little bit more direct. I think you're seeing it a little bit more from Man City now. I think they're passing forward a lot quicker. And it's been good to watch. It has been very, very good to watching City, definitely.
Cancelo is catching the eye, right back / midfield general. I'd love to have almost a 90 minutes end-on view and just get to see exactly what he's doing, when he's doing it, why he's doing it, because he seems
like the old player cam.
Well, it'd be great because he seems to be doing all sorts and popping up in all sorts of areas, and I don't think anybody's found an easy way to handle him thus far. What's he doing for you?
Well, I think when you see him in general, and I think anyone that's going to play at the base of that City midfield, I think he is quite disciplined when he sits there, when he plays in even the right back position. I think he's quite disciplined in holding the position. I think if you watch Guardiola's side, we've spoken about that over the years, about the positional sense of the side, how they make the pitch so big, coming back into a condensed way when they lose the ball, like most of the best sides do now anyway. But keeps the game very, very simple. I don't think he does anything, overly elaborate. I don't think he's overly elaborate when he gets onto the ball. I don't think he's not the sort of player that's going to be doing what De Bruyne does and hitting, raking passes and passing forward quickly. But I think by keeping it simple, I think it's his best way. And I think that's what I've noticed about him especially. I think where he's really caught the eye by City, when maybe in the last couple of seasons they have had defensive issues. Fernandinho's had to play in defence. They've not had anyone, I don't think, that's played in that sort of mould when they've played there as well, that's had discipline to play there and be that little bit of a playmaker for them. I think he's done that well. So, yeah, I think that's where he's impressed.
I was listening to Gary Neville after one of the games, and he's at the stadium, which, is a really nice way to get a sense of what City are doing.
Yeah.
And so
that's what I miss. You do miss it, don't you? Let's be honest. We miss going to games.
Stop.
Over here is different, of course, it is for me, but you miss getting that picture. You do miss a lot. You miss a lot, certainly, when you're covering games as well.
Well, what he said was, so Man City have a lot of possession high up the field, always have, always will, even if they are being a bit more direct at times. But he was saying, last year, if they lost the ball high up the field, there was a very often quick and direct route to their goal if you broke. It was too easy to just cut right through the middle and be in on goal.
Yeah.
He said what's happening now is that you've got Diaz, obviously, who's been a revelation, and you've Stones, who's rehabilitated. So if City have the ball high up, he was saying, you've your two centre-halves, you have Fernandinho in front of them, and you have the right back and the left back, whoever they are, stepping inside alongside Fernandinho. So suddenly you've got this bank of three and then two centre-halves behind them, and it's this fairly rock-solid five waiting for you if you win the ball. And it sounds so simple, and I'm sure it's nothing that lots of other teams aren't doing perhaps, but that was Neville's sense of why they looked that bit more solid, certainly not as susceptible on the break anymore.
I think so. One other thing, I mentioned Stones before, his resurgence as well. But I think John Stones, whenever we've seen him over the years and the chances he's taken, not just with the ball, but I think without the ball, John Stones has always tried to step in front of strikers. He's tried to read the game quickly to step in. And I think he's not doing that as much. I think John Stones has been a little bit more cautious. I think he's probably... He's not getting any younger as well. Maybe his pace, he's never been the quickest as it is, but maybe he feels as though he has been exposed. Maybe he's watched videos back of himself where he has been exposed. And I think he's been a lot more of a steadying influence. When you watch the games again, you don't get a feel for it because you're not at the match, but you certainly feel that he's a lot more of an organiser within that back four, back five, however they've played at times. So I think that's certainly helped them as well. So they've been able to have that stable platform when they've been going forward, but also... and probably what Neville's touching on there is I think they are becoming more organised, actually talking to each other a little bit, rather than actually saying, look, we won't go and press one guy that's going to leave us exposed on a 2v1. We will stay on a 2v2 now. We'll stay on a 3v3, and we'll leave ourselves defensively more stable. That's probably what Neville's trying to get at within that as well, where they have been, certainly have been more stable. But John Stones, I feel, has certainly, without... When you've seen John Stones at his best over the years, he's been stepping in, he's been, a little bit gung-ho at times. I think he's not like that anymore. I think he's maybe started to grow up a little bit, but also he's starting to give a bit more stability to the side.
That's interesting. So, for instance, if, on 10 occasions, ball has gone into forwards' feet, Stones might step in brilliantly and win it 7 or 8 times out of 10, but the 2 or 3 times it doesn't, they're badly exposed.
It looks bad, it looks bad as well.
So now
how's that happened?
Yeah, so now he's saying, you know what, I'll be a bit more mature here. If you have to have the ball with your back to goal in a certain position, I'm going to let you have it.
Well, exactly. Giving the strikers probably a little bit more respect, ultimately, giving them a yard, not necessarily wanting to go too tight, especially on that initial ball that's played into them. You're almost saying, I'll let the striker take the touch. I'll let him have his first touch, and then maybe I'll try and nick it on his second touch or even his third touch if he's going to keep hold of the ball. Because most of the teams that City play against are having to play a counter-attacking way anyway. So what John Stones has maybe learned, I feel, if you're playing against a counter-attacking side, if you let that striker take his first touch, you can step in, because obviously the players are sitting that deep. They're going to have to travel 40, 50 yards and beyond that to get into support. And he's recognised maybe that I can actually give myself a little bit more time. It doesn't necessarily have to be the first ball that I'm winning. I've noticed it a few times with him. I don't know if it's a conscious thing. I really don't. I don't know if it's something that he's worked on, but it's certainly something that I've noticed where he's not been as hasty to step in and win the ball quickly.
So Aguero's coming back, and Jesus, they're waiting maybe for him to hit the heights they hope he'll hit. But there's been a lot of games where they're doing this without an out-and-out striker, and it hasn't hurt them thus far. It hasn't hurt them thus far.
Jesus has probably adapted to that type of role, not necessarily a goal scorer. Aguero is an out-and-out goal scorer when he plays, whereas Jesus, when he plays, he allows Sterling to score, he allows Gundogan to score. He is a little bit selfless. I know he scored the goals the other night, and he finished his second goal, wasn't it? It was actually a lovely finish of the night as well, but he is playing that role more, I'd feel, as well, So therefore, do you think Guardiola will have it in his plans to go out and get an out-and-out striker over the summer, or will he feel, do you know what, this works fine with the players I have without one? Because, Haaland, there's an arms race brewing now to get Haaland, isn't there? Well, if he comes available, then City are the obvious club that's going to be in for him. There's going to be several, I'm sure, that's going to be in for him. It just depends on where he wants to go, isn't it? That's the thing. The link from his father may play into that. I'm not too sure, but I think...
Do City need a striker? Or are they? Does this system work just fine?
Not with the way that they're playing. No. It's been interesting to see Liverpool and the criticism that Thiago's getting, because when we've watched Liverpool over the years, when they've not necessarily last season when they were excellent, but in previous seasons before that, when they were playing good football and they weren't necessarily able to dominate games, it was maybe a midfield where you're going, they need someone that's just going to be a bit more patient, hold on to the ball a little bit. That they're becoming exposed because he's not necessarily good defensively. If you flip that to City, that it's working for them, that they've got a striker that's not necessarily going to be scoring 30, 35 goals a season. It might be a player that's going to get you 15 to 18 like Firmino at Liverpool. And it might not necessarily work throughout the side, but if Haaland comes available and City can get him, they're going to go for him, aren't they? Let's be honest. It'll be stupid not to, really.
We'd Pat Nevin on a couple of weeks ago. It was after Haaland and Mbappe had scored in those consecutive nights in the Champions League. It was just kind of amazing moment to watch, almost the baton being handed over to these two. And Nevin, a great judge of a player and very kind of thoughtful with his views. And he was saying Haaland is going to be and is the better player by a mile. He was like, for me, it's Haaland. And you're hearing other people saying...
And Mbappe.
Yeah, so...
I wouldn't agree with that.
Would you not?
I wouldn't agree with that. I think as a player, individually, I'm talking for pure talent. If you're talking about a player who's one-on-one with the defender, I'd take Mbappe. I think Mbappe's technically better. I do feel that as a player, hold-up play. If you watch Haaland, even now, I watched Dortmund a couple of weeks ago, balls still do bounce off him. I'm not saying that's not going to be the case with Mbappe. I'm talking as a technical footballer and maybe awareness for others as well. An all-round footballer. There's still a lot to learn, Mbappe. I would take Mbappe, but if you're looking at a player that's going to be an out-and-out number 9, just playing that number 9 position, I'd take Haaland. But I think Mbappe is much more adaptable. And I think if you're a footballer that'd be on the training ground, I think you absolutely would be saying that Mbappe is a better footballer than Haaland. But they both have their own strengths. As a number 9, Haaland as a number 9 absolutely is is certainly the best around right now. Absolutely is, yeah.
So to be fair, they're slightly different players in slightly different positions.
They are different players, exactly. I mean, Mbappe's played off the right, hasn't he? He's played off the left, predominantly off the left, really, where he has actually played. So, yeah, they are different players. But if you're talking about the talent, absolute talent, it's been the same with Messi and Ronaldo over the years. I think anyone would accept Lionel Messi is the better footballer, without a shadow of a doubt. And that's the same with Mbappe and Haaland. If you're talking about a technical player and the ability itself, Mbappe is a better footballer, yeah.
Either way, look, it's going to be fun watching them. Holy moly.
Yeah, definitely. I think that we're looking forward to it. I think we're all looking forward to it. Over the next, hopefully we get another 10 years out of them and they both stay injury-free or relatively injury-free. They're going to have downs. They're going to have bad spells. They're going to have, spells where they're not necessarily scoring or as consistent. But let's just hope that we can get the same sort of fireworks we've had out of Ronaldo and Messi over the last 10 years, yeah.
I know, because when you think about it, it's actually amazing the extent to which Messi, and maybe especially Ronaldo, given the pace he would go at it, they never had those injuries which diminished them. They never had that Michael Owen hamstring tear. They kept going and kept going. Like Haaland and Mbappe they're thoroughbreds, and you don't want that injury. Now, look, maybe technology and sports science is such that they'll be fine, because I think Michael Owen's hamstring issue, to use that example, was misdiagnosed initially. But at the same time, probably doesn't take much for the hamstrings to just start feeling vulnerable.
Look at Gareth Bale. He's a prime example of that, isn't he? Look at Gareth Bale 4 or 5 years ago, and he was just this sensational player. And I know that he's still got the ability, the 2 goals that he scored at the weekend or the other day, you're still seeing the talent that he has. But he looks to me like he's not moving well. He doesn't look like he's got the pace that he once had. And that's obviously, he's had calf injuries, he's had hamstring injuries. And even with modern technology and the modern medicine that we could point to now, it's not necessarily always going to be the case that you can actually look after your body and have a straightforward career injury free.
Because I remember Ryan Giggs said that for I think most of his 30s, he basically stopped sprinting full out. Yeah. That was clear to see, wasn't it, as well? Giggs adapted his game. He was playing more on the inside, and I think United were. If you look back to United from that 90s team when they had Kanchelskis and Giggs and these players, they were actually a brilliant counter-attacking side. Those 2 players especially were having to travel with the ball, take them up the pitch quickly. Giggs absolutely changed his game. And I think United changed the style of play anyway, didn't they? They were dominating the ball more, so they had to change the game with sides are dropping off them a lot more. So I think it suited them that United had to play a different way anyway. Yeah. Did you, at I don't know what age, 32, 33 territory, did you stop sprinting flat out a little bit? I honestly, I had a lot of issues with my back that probably I didn't know I'd had till my early 30s, when I was probably suffering with that from my mid-20s. I spoke to you many times probably about this. I think my game absolutely changed when I was probably 22, 23. I'd gone from playing a certain way where I was a little bit more of a player that could go out onto the pitch and almost do what he wanted. That's what I could do as a kid. Certainly at West Brom, even the early days when I first came into the Irish squad at under 21 level, I was a player that you don't necessarily have to have a responsibility defensively. You've got to go out and do your thing. And maybe when I stepped up to Premier League level, you start to realise that you can't do that, and you've got to start to adapt your game anyway. So. And you're also playing in a side that's not necessarily going to be having a lot of possession. You're going to have to be sitting in against teams, and you're going to have to certain style of way, so certain style of play. But I wouldn't necessarily thought in my head consciously. Maybe after 25, 26, when my back did start to give me problems. Certainly before that, even though my game adapted, not necessarily through injury. I think the injury started to take the toll, certainly once I hit my late 20s, yeah. It's funny you say that, because I think even you were on Twitter, you had seen the report, Tony O'Donoghue had put it up, of your debut game a couple of months back, and there was an interview you did, ahead of your debut in Iceland, I think it was, wasn't it? Yeah. But it's funny, it's coming back to me now, because it struck me at the time. There was a clip of just almost warming up for training, or passing the ball in a five-a-side or whatever. But you were in it, and whatever age you were then, there was definitely, there was this springiness about you. Like, you looked so fast and so sharp. There was a speed to your turn, actually. That ability that went when you were watching me later on. I just thought, I don't remember him being like, you looked lightning. That was just a clip of training, and it's out of context. I was yourself. I was absolutely
I had pace. I had pace as a youngster, definitely had pace as a youngster. And that was maybe one thing. I wouldn't necessarily say that I was lightning quick, but I could hold my own with the quickest in any football club, if you know what I mean, or any team.
Yeah.
And I think as I got older, I think maybe in certain ways, as I was saying before, I adapted my own style, maybe a confidence thing as well, where I felt as though that once I'd stepped up to Premier League level as well, I had to maybe adapt the games to fit in and things like that to almost to hold on. If you're not playing well, when I first stepped up to Sunderland, I wasn't playing well. And I felt as though that I had to adapt my game to try and stay in the side. And I think maybe if it's not a criticism of Peter Reid or anything like that, who was my Premier League manager, but if I had a manager that could have sat down with me then and gone through little clips with me personally and said, look, you don't necessarily have to get bogged down with having to change things. You don't necessarily have to be doing this. Play the game that you've obviously played while trying to adapt it. And I think that my game could have. You obviously have regrets across the course of your career, and you look back at certain things that would have happened. But I could have. I definitely could have. I didn't necessarily need to change my game the way that I certainly changed it anyway. That's what I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to talk to you about United and Liverpool and this race for top four, but a brief tangent. I know you were looking on at the James McLean story, which blew up in a big way. And you made an interesting point on Twitter. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but to the effect that, you were one of those players who, with the poppy thing, didn't feel great about wearing it, but just decided to go along with it and not try to kick up a storm. And you felt that would be an experience not dissimilar to lots of Irish players over there.
Yeah, I said that, and I'd spoken about that on air as well with you guys over the years as well. I don't know when the poppy became, was certainly on shirts, maybe mid 2000s. It probably would have been. All of a sudden, the poppy became a thing where it was on the shirts, and I remember myself and other Irish players would have spoken about it. We did at the time, but we just went with it. It was just something that, I do remember with James that I felt as though that the statement that was made around him when he refused to wear the poppy for the first time at Sunderland wasn't great at all. I think he was hung out to dry. I do think that, and that's where
I don't really remember that. They just
he didn't wear the poppy initially, and obviously there was no statement that James had made.
Yeah.
But the Sunderland on his behalf, or Sunderland made a statement as a club on the club's behalf to say that he's refused to wear it without necessarily going to him and asking him. It was just a statement that was made. It was almost as if they made it behind his back in many respects. And I think they hung him out to dry on that one. I do believe that at the time. And that's where it's gone from there. That all of a sudden, this guy's disrespecting us. He's disrespecting our country, disrespecting our supporters, our club.
Yeah.
And I think with me, and I maybe look a bit of regret myself, absolutely, that, and maybe many other Irish players would have done over the years as well, that if it would have been a standalone thing with James McLean and I would have been playing Premier League football at that particular time, it's easy to say. It is easy to say, don't get me wrong, but I'm sure that there would have been a lot more players who have spoken about it that would have said, well, look, no, we've got to stand with him here on this one. This is more than just James being on his own, coming out saying that he's not going to wear a poppy, because there are a lot of Irish players over the years that would have spoken about it and wouldn't have done if they'd have actually been given the choice, rather than actually just turn up for the game on the Saturday or whatever day it would have been and just expected to go and wear the shirt.
And would you have regrets? I know, you were towards the end of your career when he made the stand, but would you have regrets that you didn't join him, or you didn't?
I think I was finished.
You were gone, yeah.
No, I was finished.
You were gone by 2012, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I was gone, yeah. Do you know what? At the time, it was almost a thing that seemed to rear its ugly head for the week leading up to Remembrance Day, wasn't it? It was something that came up. It was like, oh, here we go again. James is going to get it. But I don't think any of us were probably aware of the extent that, only maybe in the last couple of years, but certainly initially, the extent of the abuse that he was getting consistently across the year, not just off the back of Remembrance Day, but also at every game that, I remember I went probably maybe 2015, 16, I was covering was James playing at Wigan at the time? I think he was actually playing at Wigan, early 2000, maybe 2013, 14. And I think I was doing a game went to watch him, and James was getting abuse from his own supporters. And I just thought to myself, Jesus Christ, like, it wasn't great to see. And it wasn't how he was playing. It wasn't down to his ability whatsoever. The negativity set in almost in the warm-up prior to the game, and that was then building throughout the game. And no matter what anyone says, James has always come out in defiance over the years. He's always said, look, I thrive off it, the abuse that I've got, and it's been something to spur me on a little bit. But no one's going to be able to perform with that level of abuse that's come his way, even as I said, in warm-ups and in the early stages of the game, without anything really majorly happening with him as a player. He's not necessarily even contributed to the game, yet he was getting abuse.
Yeah. And the messages he's brought to light recently are just horrific. I mean, hopefully that leads to some sort of stand taken by social media companies. I don't really think you're going to get through to all the idiots out there, because there's always going to be another idiot who'll... and
that would have always been there, Joe. I'm not being funny, Joe. It's always been there. And not just like, I'm not just going to jump. I remember I was playing, it was years ago. I was actually playing at Wickham. I always remember it was Wickham. I'm not too sure. I think I was at Preston. So it was maybe the early days where you start to have a flag by the side of a player's name. I could have been at West Brom. I think I was at West Brom as well. But I remember playing, and I was out in a wider area, close supporters, and I got a shout from one of the supporters, you Fenian whatever. I looked around and I was like, how does this guy even know me? I think I actually was at Preston, because I was only about 18, 19 at the time. I was like, how does this guy even know me? But it was obviously through a programme that they'd seen maybe the flag next to my name. I was playing the 21 football maybe at the time. And so we're going back, even, it was a lot more probably vocal then, where if a player was going to get abuse, it would be probably abuse if he was out having a drink with the lads or wherever it would be. It has changed. There's a subtle element to it now, but it's a lot more severe because it's a lot more personal. But it was happening 30 years ago. It was happening 25, 30 years ago. Yeah. But it was just that it's just now you're getting directly to James, and you're getting the abuse, and the level that he's at is way more than anything that I would have ever received. But let's be honest. But it just brought me back to a little time where you think, this guy doesn't even know me. I've had stick for being English. That's been the thing. You're English so and so. When you're trying to say, "Geez, you piss off and leave me alone here."
No, nobody wants you.
I'm Irish.
Nobody wants you. We'll take a short break. Got to talk to Kev about Liverpool, Chelsea Thursday, and Manchester United as well. Our football coverage on Off the Ball is with thanks to Paddy Power. For information on responsible gambling, visit gamblingcare.ie. Back in a sec.
OTB.
Now you're very welcome along to the...
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.